It is said of the white snowfield that it is the center of the world, and it is home to terrifying monsters that inhabit its vast snows. Among these monsters, there is a giant white serpent that devours glaciers, a huge gray bear that causes earthquakes, and a cursed rat that corrupts and pollutes the seas. But despite all these horrors, an emperor who once escaped from that place mentioned that the monsters are not the most dangerous thing there. In the heart of the white snowfield, a man confronts a ferocious scorpion-like monster and engages it in a fierce battle, succeeding in eliminating it with swift strikes. After the battle, one of his companions remarks with disdain that what he did is exactly what one would expect from a barbarian, who always flaunts his ignorance as if it were a badge of honor. The silver-haired young man grumbles about how long he has had to spend with these fools, so the girl innocently asks him the meaning of the word ignorance, and whether it's something that can be eaten, prompting him to sigh in despair and tell her to forget it. In another scene, he scolds them for eating food he explicitly warned them not to eat, or they would die. He expresses his astonishment at how they devoured everything in less than a week, to which the girl and the bald man respond by considering what they did an admirable challenge, taking his words as a form of praise. Suddenly, the bald man named Greta falls ill, then collapses unconscious, and the girl frantically tries to wake him up, screaming. Amidst this chaos, the hero thinks to himself that this situation was never what he had wished for. His memories take him back to the past, where he longed to go to a fantasy world full of wonders and magic. To achieve his dream, he quit his job and embarked on an epic journey, where he climbed the highest mountain on Earth, reached its core, and traveled to the southernmost point of the planet. But of course nothing happened. He prayed every night, realizing that reality was far from fantasy, wishing to wake up in the heart of a fantasy world. And one day his prayers were answered. The scene shifts back to the past, where a man is shivering from the bitter cold. His companion advises him to wrap himself in more fur if he doesn't want to freeze to death. It turns out they are part of a group of mercenaries led by a captain, tasked with crossing the white snowfield. One of the men complains that this mission is suicidal no matter how tempting the reward, describing the idea of crossing this place as pure madness. The captain orders them to be silent, reminding them that they all agreed to this mission. The man replies that they didn't know the situation would be this harsh and cold. Inside a warm carriage, an elderly servant asks a young lady named Melina from the House of Akasha if she is okay. She replies that she is fine. Outside, the voices of the guards are heard complaining about the deadly cold, prompting the servant to call them insolent bastards. But Melina defends them, telling her servant not to be so harsh, as they were the only ones who agreed to guard them during their journey across the white snowfield. Afterwards, Melina suggests they should bring the guards inside, as it seems absolutely freezing outside. The servant refuses her request, reminding Melina that she knows very well what inhabits this white snowfield. Melina guesses he means the monsters. The servant begins to tell a story about an emperor who lived long ago, who wished to control the entire world and sought to conquer the white snowfield to achieve his ambition. The emperor led his strongest fighters and soldiers and entered the snowfield himself. After a few years, his empire collapsed and was forgotten by history, and the emperor returned alone after losing all his fighters and soldiers. He looked decades older and spoke like a man who had lost his mind, confirming the existence of monsters in the snowfield. But he added that the most dangerous thing there is not a monster, but the barbarian. He likened the place to a hell from which no one returns alive. The servant tries to say that it's just a legend, but Melina insists that the emperor's words carried weight, as most of the creatures he described were later discovered. The servant smiles and adds that despite this, no one has ever claimed to have seen a barbarian. Melina admits that what he says is true. Outside, the mercenary captain suddenly orders everyone to halt, pointing out that there is something on the horizon. They cannot see the figure clearly in the distant horizon amidst the falling snow. The captain tells them the good news is that the newcomer is small, but the bad news is that it is heading straight for them. Everyone is shocked and expectant. As the figure approaches, they realize it is a human. But the real shock comes when they recognize him as a barbarian, striking terror into the hearts of the mercenaries. The barbarian approaches and speaks to them, explaining that he couldn't stand the sight of the other barbarians and went out for a walk. He introduces himself as Ketal from the Achin tribe, expressing his surprise at the presence of strangers in the snowfield and considering it a stroke of luck. Ketal guesses they are a group of mercenaries protecting a merchant caravan and suggests they turn back, though he doubts they will. He then asks if their employer is in the nearby carriage. Afterwards, he surprises them with a smile, saying he would like to be hired too. The mercenaries are stunned and ask in confusion what he means. Ketal clarifies his offer. He will help them cross the snowfield. The mercenaries are suspicious, wondering why a legendary barbarian would ask for work, if that's all he wants, and one wonders if this means he isn't hostile. Katal responds to their unspoken doubts, saying that if he were hostile, they would all be dead by now. One of the mercenaries hesitantly asks his captain for his decision. Inside the carriage, the servant and Melina overhear the conversation. The captain tells Melina that the barbarian is asking to be hired as a mercenary, then asks for her decision. When the servant asks the mercenary captain for his opinion on the outcome of a fight, should one occur, the captain strongly advises against it. Upon hearing this, Melina makes her decision and tells the captain to inform the barbarian that they accept his offer. The captain affirms his respect for her decision and goes to inform the barbarian of their agreement. Katal expresses his pleasure at hearing the great news. Suddenly, Katal heads directly for the carriage, to the captain's surprise and horror. Katal tells him there is no need to be afraid. They are just employees, and he needs to speak with the employer directly. The captain warns him that he will not hesitate to deal with him if he tries anything suspicious. Katal remains silent, while one of the mercenaries anxiously asks the captain if it's really right to let him meet her. Another mercenary wonders why they don't try to stop him as guards, to which his companion scoffs that the idea of stopping him is a ridiculous joke. Inside, the servant panics as Melina prepares to go out, but she asks him to remain calm. Katal's voice is heard from outside, asking if he can come in, which shocks Melina. After composing herself, she grants him entry. Inside the carriage, Katal tells the servant he hopes he has calmed down, assuring him he has no intention of harming them. It runs through Melina's mind that the legendary barbarian is standing right in front of her. She greets him nervously, and Katal calmly returns the greeting. Katal comments on the warmth of the carriage, noting that it's difficult to maintain this level of warmth in a snowfield. Melina explains that the warmth comes from magic, and Katal seems satisfied as if he had expected that from this world. Katal gets to the point, explaining that the place is dangerous, and their chances of survival with the current mercenaries are very slim, so he will take over their protection. But he adds that he has one condition, so Melina asks him what he wants. Katal reveals his condition, knowledge from outside the snowfield, specifically the information she possesses. Melina inquires about his request, and Katal assures her she will lose nothing. Melina realizes she has no other choice and agrees. Katal is pleased with her agreement and asks for her name. She introduces herself as Melina from the House of Akasha. He in turn introduces himself as Katal, expressing his pleasure in working with her. The narrative shifts to Katal's inner thoughts, who had longed for a fantasy world, only to wake up one day as a barbarian in a snowfield, with no time to understand why. He remembers that all that existed there was the biting cold and endless powerful monsters, and that he led a tribe, struggled for survival, and endured it all in despair. For countless years, he continuously tried to get out of that miserable snowfield, but an unknown power, appearing as an incomplete quest, prevented him from leaving, as he could only depart after completing it. And just as he was about to give up, people from the outside world would sometimes appear, although he never understood why they would willingly come to such a terrible place. Katal realized that the world outside this miserable snowfield is the world of fantasy and magic he had always longed for. From that moment on, he began to work diligently not just for survival, but for the goal of getting out. He remembers how he crushed monsters and completed the quests given to him one after another, driven by the single thought that he would one day get out. Since he cannot leave this place, the information he gets from outsiders is extremely precious to him. But most of the humans he had met so far either panicked and tried to fight him or went mad. He reflects on how much time has passed since he had a conversation with a civilized person, feeling that talking with Melina is like a healing for his mind after being surrounded by uneducated barbarians. The scene returns to the present, where Katal deduces that they are transporting weapons. Melina asks him in surprise how he knew that. He explains that he can hear the sound of sharp weapons from the carriages, making it obvious, and then asks her if there is a war going on outside. Melina confirms that the Empire and the Kingdom are currently at war, to which Katal comments that the outside world isn't entirely peaceful either. Melina adds that the Great Empire is pushing hard with immense numbers, but the Kingdom does not give in easily, and that swordmasters and heroes are protecting the borders. These terms pique Katal's curiosity, and he asks what kind of power they use. Melina asks if he doesn't know about mysticism, and he replies that he has never left this place. Melina admits she doesn't know the exact details either, but she begins to explain. She clarifies that there is a power called mysticism in the world, and that very few people can feel or use it. These individuals are given power ranks. The third rank refers to those who can only sense the power of mysticism. The second rank includes those who can actually use this power, and the first rank are those who can manifest the power in the form of mana or aura, with knights, mages, and element users typically belonging to this rank. She explains that beyond that, the ranks become meaningless, because their holders are beings beyond human comprehension. She describes the transcendent rank, people who can control and freely use mysticism, capable of splitting the heavens and the earth, and the Swordmaster belongs to this rank. Finally, there is the hero, who is described as a mythical being that goes beyond controlling mysticism to influence the world itself. Melina concludes her explanation by noting that even a third-rank holder is considered a powerful person in a small region. After hearing all this, Catal declares that he would like to meet them, leaving Melina bewildered. Catal thinks to himself that he no longer remembers how long he has been trapped here, and he was just desperately trying to survive. All he knows is that he is in a snowfield in the middle of a fantasy world, and he cannot escape it. He desperately wants to get out of this snowfield. He corrects himself insistently, saying that he must get out. Melina resumes her talk, asking Catal if he is the barbarian from the legends. He replies that one could say so, and he deduces from her expression that she is aware of his existence. She confirms there is a legend about him, which surprises Catal to hear. Catal laughs as he realizes the madman he met before must have been the emperor from the legend. He then assures Melina that her legend is likely true, as such a person did come here a long time ago. Catal changes the subject, wondering why they are transporting such a large quantity of weapons through this particularly dangerous snowfield. When Catal asks her the reason for her journey, Melina replies that they need a lot of money. She explains that her family, who has been in trade for generations, has accumulated massive debts due to the schemes of envious rivals, and that this journey is to prevent their family's collapse. Catal cleverly deduces that her plan to pay off the debts is to sell weapons to the kingdom, which is at war with the Empire, surprising Melina with his ability to know that. Catal explains his reasoning, saying she previously mentioned that the Empire attacks with huge numbers, meaning it doesn't lack weapons, and therefore it is the kingdom that needs them. And when supply is low and demand is high, prices rise. He concludes that although he doesn't know the value of things outside, the profit must be worth the risk of crossing the snowfield. He also deduces that since they are taking this dangerous route, there must be no other way to reach the kingdom, suggesting their territory's borders touch the Empire's. Melina confirms that his deduction is correct. Melina is stunned by his shrewdness, thinking that this is impossible, as she had heard the legendary barbarian was a savage ignoramus, and she wonders about his true identity. Suddenly the carriage shakes violently, and the servant cries out in surprise. Catal calmly announces that they have uninvited guests. Outside, a huge, deformed monster appears before the mercenaries, and they recognize it as a black slime. Catal asks if that is its name, and Melina confirms it, adding that it is a monster recorded in the archives. She adds that many powerful adventurers have challenged the snowfield over the years, and though few returned alive, they left records of the creatures they encountered, and the black slime appears in most of these records. She then asks Catal if he knows it too. Catal nonchalantly replies that of course he knows it. They are rubbery things that are okay for a snack, describing them as a decent meal. Melina is horrified and asks him in disbelief if he eats them. He asks if she wants to try one and suggests they hunt some, but she refuses in a panic. The black slime prepares to attack, and everyone looks to Catal for help. But Catal clarifies that he has a pact with them to protect their lives, and therefore he will only intervene if there is a real danger. He tells them they can handle this thing themselves, and more importantly, he needs to assess the power level of the outside world for himself. The monster attacks the mercenaries, and the captain orders his men to raise their shields. The mercenaries struggle against the monster's powerful attacks. One of them jumps and tries to finish the monster, but he is thrown away like an insect, causing him to curse the monster's strength. The captain remembers an important piece of information and shouts the attack pattern, explaining that the black slime can only move in straight lines, and orders his men to disperse and coordinate their attacks. His men immediately respond to the order, confirming their understanding of the new plan. The mercenaries execute the captain's plan precisely, dodging the black slime's attacks and delivering their blows simultaneously. The monster screams in pain under the weight of their coordinated attacks. As they continue to stab relentlessly, the captain urges them to keep up the attack without stopping. When the captain realizes that normal attacks are useless, he orders his men to target the nucleus hidden somewhere inside the monster. The captain himself delivers a powerful blow with his glowing sword downwards, cutting through the slime's body. The monster's red nucleus shatters, and its body begins to melt. The mercenaries celebrate their victory, panting, and express their disbelief that they actually succeeded in defeating it. But their celebration is short-lived, as another monster, a giant white wolf, suddenly appears. The mercenaries immediately engage the new threats, with one shouting for them to aim for the neck. Then one of them pounces directly on the wolf. After the battle, one of the mercenaries comments with some arrogance that the white snowfield isn't that dangerous, and that the rumors were probably exaggerated. But the captain warns him not to be complacent, reminding them that they are not even halfway through. The conversation shifts to Katal, with one mercenary wondering if the barbarian is truly strong, pointing out that he is just part of the Emperor's legend and hasn't fought yet. Another adds that Katal, supposedly at the bottom of the food chain here, is relying on them for protection, and suggests they should check his strength. Inside the carriage, silence reigns between Melina and Katal. A mercenary approaches the carriage and asks to speak with Melina. He reminds her that they are mercenaries risking their lives to carry out this mission under their contract with her. Melina expresses her deep gratitude for them accepting this dangerous mission that everyone else fled from just by hearing its details, and that without them, she wouldn't have even been able to try. But the mercenary clarifies that there is one thing bothering him. The barbarian hasn't fought even once. They tell her they wish to confirm if the barbarian truly deserves the special treatment he is receiving. The captain claims he tried to stop them, but they didn't listen. Katal, who was listening, intervenes, saying he doesn't mind testing his strength, but not now. He explains that they have other visitors who came before them. A new ominous voice echoes, expressing its delight at the arrival of weak humans and describing them as a delicacy. Everyone is shocked at the appearance of this new threat. A huge, terrifying white serpent appears, telling them to scream and suffer as they please, as it will add flavor to its meal. The serpent's overwhelming presence causes Melina and the mercenaries to scream in pain. Katal steps forward and orders the serpent to stop, declaring that these are his guests, and commands it to go back. The serpent asks Katal why he is there, reminding him of the snowfield's rules that prohibit leaving the tribe's territory. Katal replies that it's none of its business, which angers the serpent, telling him not to be ridiculous. The serpent announces its identity as a serpent, wondering how a barbarian dares to give orders to it, the one promised immortality. Katal sarcastically replies that it then needs to be disciplined, and launches himself at it in a fierce attack. The clash results in a massive explosion of energy, creating a powerful shockwave. Melina screams from the intensity of the blast and its impact. Katal stands over the defeated serpent, saying it's the type that only listens after getting a good beating. Melina watches the scene in awe, and Katal reassures her that he will finish it quickly. Katal unleashes a final devastating attack, annihilating the serpent in a flash of brilliant light. After what happened, the mercenaries who had doubted Katal's power beg for forgiveness, to which he replies that it's okay because he understands it's not easy to trust a stranger. Katal tells Melina he has a question. He notes that, from her clothes and way of speaking, she doesn't seem like just a simple representative of her family, and asks her why she personally undertook this dangerous journey. After some hesitation, Melina reveals she is the first daughter of Velika, a concubine or second wife to Lord Kasakakasha. She explains that her mother, who came for a political marriage, was used and abandoned, a miserable mother with no real power. Melina confesses that she and her mother are considered family in name only, but in reality they are treated like servants, then regrets revealing so much. She confirms that she volunteered for this dangerous journey, adding that someone had to set an example. Katal tells her he understands, describing her as very smart, greedy, and highly ambitious. Suddenly, the exit of the snowfield appears before them. The mercenaries are surprised by the scene before them, seeing green grass, heralding the end of their journey in the snow. Melina thanks Katal, and he tells her they can return through the Empire, as it will be easy after selling the weapons. Melina asks him what he meant by describing her as smart and ambitious. Katal confirms that his words meant exactly what he said. He begins to explain his deduction, saying that her once highly respected family is now in great turmoil due to a lack of funds. He adds that although she is the daughter of a concubine, if she personally takes action and carves a path to salvation, while the family is on the verge of collapse. He asks, in that case, who will the people trust and follow? He concludes that her true goal is to seize real power in the family. He then asks if he is mistaken, and Melina admits his answer is perfect. Katal comments that it's a common story for a concubine's child to take on a dangerous challenge to inherit the family. Melina thinks to herself that this barbarian is intelligent, not like the half-baked intellectuals she has met, and imagines what it would be like if his power, which defeated the white serpent without a scratch, became hers. Accordingly, she offers Katal to come with her if he ever considers leaving the snowfield. Katal declines her offer for now, explaining that he still has some matters to attend to. So, Melina offers him a piece of her jewelry. She tells him that if he ever gets out and looks for the Akasha family, he should show them this piece. Katal gladly accepts the gift. They exchange farewells, with Melina thanking him and praying they will meet again. Katal watches their carriage as it drives away. 5 years later, in the white snowfield, a message appears stating that Katal has completed quest number 1784 and that all conditions have been met. Another message appears telling him he can leave the snowfield, and he begins to cross through a shimmering barrier. Katal thinks that this is finally his first step into the fantasy world he has always wanted. He enjoys the smells of grass, animals, and the river, scents he would never have experienced in the snowfield. He expresses his happiness with these new smells, feeling completely satisfied. He shouts at the distant snowfield, vowing never to return to it. He reflects on finally reaching the world he dreamed of, the world of fantasy and mystery he thought he would never reach, and that, although the starting point was terribly wrong, he managed to survive. He announces his intention to enjoy this world with all its dragons, elves, magic, and swords. He believes his intense desire to reach this fantasy world is what kept him alive in that hell. Then he senses a gathering of beings nearby. He assumes this gathering is a village and feels excited to finally see a civilized town. He remembers the ignorant barbarians he lived with and how they were oblivious to the importance of shelter, and feels a strong nostalgia for a well-designed human settlement. As he wonders how to introduce himself politely, he hears a voice. The voice announces to the dear elf villagers that this place will become their new home. He watches a group of elves unloading their belongings and celebrating their new home. A young elf anxiously asks an elder if the place is truly safe, and the elder assures him it is. But the young man is still worried, even though the area is remote and inaccessible to humans. He expresses his concern about the proximity of the snowfield, and the elder understands he fears the appearance of monsters. The elder reassures him, saying that nothing has come out of the snowfield for thousands of years, and that they have also set up a barrier as a precaution. He explains that they have placed a magical concealment barrier based on ancient elven magic, making the place look like an ordinary forest, and that as long as the barrier remains, no outsider can reach them. He adds that even if monsters came, they have Her Majesty the Queen, whom even the monsters of the snowfield cannot touch. At that very moment, Katal feels he has torn something as he walks, wondering if there was something in this place, unaware that he has just breached the barrier. As Katal walks through the forest, he wonders how much farther he has to go. Suddenly, he comes across a lost little elf girl. He is overjoyed to see a real elf, one of the fantasy races he had always imagined, and feels that his survival so far has been worthwhile. The little girl was crying and scared, having realized she had wandered too far and lost her way. Katal approaches her and says hello, but the girl panics at his appearance and faints. So Katal catches her. He is puzzled about what to do after she fainted before they could talk, and decides to take her back to her village. He remembers that elves in legends are a peaceful and benevolent race, and hopes that if he returns the child, they will welcome him kindly, and he will experience their hospitality. He was greatly looking forward to this experience. When he arrives at the village carrying the child, a woman, presumably her mother, screams in terror for her child, shocked by the presence of a human there. The elves react aggressively, asking him who he is and how he managed to penetrate their barrier. Katal realizes things are not going as he expected. The child's mother continues to scream. The elf elder expresses his shock, wondering how a human could have entered their protected land with a barrier. One of the elves tells him there is a crack in the barrier, and the elder panics, asking for the whereabouts of Her Majesty the Queen, and is told she has left for a short reconnaissance tour. Katal tries to explain that he is not their enemy, but a warrior threatens to hunt him to the ends of the world if he doesn't return the child. The elder declares that their location has been exposed, and concludes that since the barrier has been breached, the humans must have come fully prepared. He wonders how long the humans have been tracking them. Katal realizes they think he is a kidnapper, and decides he must clear up the misunderstanding first. He places the child, who has regained consciousness, on the ground, and tells her to go back to her people. The child looks at him, terrified by his frightening appearance, then runs away. The child cries and screams so intensely that Katal wonders if his face is really that scary. He is a little shocked. He thought his appearance was decent enough when he was in the snowfield. He tries to talk to them again, explaining that he returned the child and is not an enemy. But the elder shouts that the hostage has been released and orders everyone to attack, and the elves aim their arrows at him. They shoot their arrows, and Katal wonders if they are even listening to him. Katal reflects on the situation. In legends, elves are a kind, nature-loving, and peaceful race, but the real elves he has met are violent and savage. He concludes that elves, in the end, are a race that lives in nature, which means their way of life might be more brutal than he had imagined. He concludes that nature is a world of survival of the fittest, far from peaceful, and in that sense, the elves' brutality can be understood. As arrows rain down on him and bounce off his body harmlessly, he calmly accepts that this is reality. The elves are shocked, and the elder wonders what kind of magical tool Katal is using, ordering the archers to continue the attack, assuming he has his limits. Katal decides to calm them down and unleashes a massive wave of purple energy. The explosion creates a powerful shockwave, sending the elves flying through the air. The elder stands in a daze, wondering what just happened. Katal, standing in the crater created by the blast, repeats that he is not their enemy. He thinks to himself that he might have misjudged his strength a little. At that moment, Katal is attacked by another arrow surrounded by a phoenix-like fiery aura, and the attack causes a powerful fiery explosion. It was the elf queen, Markria Hashian Karusia, who launched the attack and asks what is going on. The elder informs her that a human has attacked them. The queen concludes that what she feared has happened and that this place is no longer safe. Katal tries to speak with her, hoping she will listen to his story. The elder is stunned that Katal is still standing after taking a direct hit from Her Majesty. The queen asks Katal if he is another powerful enemy who has come to harm them. She declares that humans are despicable creatures and introduces herself as the Queen of the Leaf Tribe. She aims a glowing arrow at him, vowing that he will pay dearly for daring to covet them. Katal feels frustrated, wondering why they can't even talk even though they speak the same language, and whether she is intentionally ignoring him or if the relations between humans and elves are just that bad. He decides that using force is unavoidable, remembering the lesson he learned in the snowfield. If they don't listen, beat them until they do. The queen releases her magical arrow. The arrow transforms into a massive spectral dragon head and heads towards Katal. Katal prepares for a counterattack, gathering energy in his fist. He punches the spectral dragon with his fist, creating a massive explosion. The queen is shocked by the result. Katal looks at his fist and comments with regret, suggesting he might have overused his power, and the queen is thrown backward. The queen falls to the ground, defeated. Katal thinks that perhaps he should have controlled his power more. The queen realizes from this brief clash that her opponent is strong, at least at a transcendent level, and wonders why someone so powerful is here. The elf queen recognizes Katal's power and orders her people to leave the area immediately for their safety. The elves withdraw on her command. The queen tells Katal that she acknowledges his strength, but assures him he will never achieve his goal. Katal thinks to himself that the situation has turned into a complete disaster when all he wanted was to talk to them. The queen begins to chant a powerful spell, summoning a horned being that carries the purest flame. She summons a great spirit in the form of a flaming bull, named Vigo. Excitement fills Katal, who thinks that the creatures in the snowfield were terrifying and strange, but this is a real summoning. He remembers that although some creatures in the snowfield had a fantasy-like appearance, most were hideous. But this creature before him, a bull with flaming horns, is completely different. He thinks excitedly that this is a true spirit and this is true fantasy. The queen orders Vigo to eliminate the enemy, but the high-level fire spirit mutters that summoning contracts are nothing but a nuisance and a hassle. The queen orders him to be silent. She thinks to herself that powerful spirits are usually old and arrogant, and that she would not have succeeded in making this contract without the help of another tribe, and she never expected to have to summon him in this way. She again orders Vigo to fulfill his contract. Vigo asks if the contract requires killing the human before him, but he suddenly hesitates when he notices something strange about Katal. He looks at Katal's intimidating aura and wonders if he is truly human. Meanwhile, Katal is still in a daze from the splendor of the fantasy scene, before realizing with disappointment that the human to be killed is himself. Vigo scoffs at the audacity of a human to covet a race of nature and decides he will burn him to ashes. Vigo charges towards Katal. Katal prepares to block the attack. Suddenly, the queen winces from the impact of a shockwave. When she opens her eyes, she is shocked to see Katal had easily blocked Vigo's attack and grabbed his horn. Katal smiles and thinks that he feels more at ease seeing a monstrous form because he doesn't hesitate to beat it to death. The queen watches the scene in horror. Katal unleashes a devastating attack that causes a massive explosion, destroying the forest, the surrounding rocks, and its echo reaches the atmosphere. The queen screams from the force of the explosion. The green forest turns into a huge crater, and the queen looks on in disbelief at what happened. Katal walks toward the defeated queen in the middle of the crater and approaches her. The defeated elf queen begs him to at least spare her people. Katal calmly assures her that he is not their enemy. The queen is shocked, unable to speak. After long talks, the elves finally accept that he was not really their enemy. The queen offers a formal apology to Katal, admitting that they were too quick to judge him. She feels deep regret, realizing how rude they were when they mistook the person who returned the lost child for an enemy. Katal tells her he understands their position, especially since they were driven from their homes by humans, but he admits he was saddened that no one listened to him. The queen confirms with him again that he was not one of the humans chasing them, and Katal explains that this is the first time he has seen an elf, as there are none in the white snowfield. The queen is shocked at the mention of the snowfield and recognizes him as the Ashen Barbarian, and Katal confirms that this is the name strangers call him. The queen expresses her disbelief, having thought it was impossible for humans to survive there. She asks him worriedly if his coming from there means that others can come too. Katal answers that he doesn't know for sure, but he doesn't think anyone else will get out the same way he did. He explains that there are rules in the snowfield that not even powerful beings like dragons can break, and that for some reason, he was the only one able to escape through something called a quest, believing his case is a rare exception. The queen is relieved, then Katal asks her about the state of her summoned creature. He bluntly reminds her that the bull was split in half. The queen reassures him that there is no need to worry, as spirits are beings of nature, and it has simply returned to the spirit world. And feeling sorry for her rudeness, she asks if he desires anything, promising to grant his wish. Katal thinks about the concept of a spirit and asks if non-elf beings can make a contract with one. At first, the queen thinks it's impossible, but she reconsiders, stating that there are some humans close to nature who can make pacts with spirits. After thinking, she tells him that if he wishes to contract a spirit, he should go to Elfo Sagrado. She explains that this place is the sacred land of all elves where their god resides, and that he might be able to fulfill his wish there. Katal asks if a human like him can go there. The queen replies that it might be possible with her recommendation, and offers to give him the location on the condition that he keeps it a secret. The queen's inner thoughts reveal that Elfo Sagrado is the dream destination for all who study elves. She thinks that elves never reveal its location to other races because humans pose a great danger to this sacred place. Despite this, she decides to trust him and offers him a glowing crystal. Katal accepts it gratefully. The queen explains that even if he reaches the area, their god will surely test him. But she expresses confidence that he will succeed and wishes him a safe journey, and Katal thanks her. The queen formally introduces herself as Markria Hashian Karusia, queen of the Leaf tribe, and asks for his name. He introduces himself as Katal, the barbarian. After some time has passed, Katal speeds through the forest. At the border of the Barkon territory in the kingdom of Gehenthra, the guards panic due to a thunderous noise and an immense power approaching them. The guard captain orders the bell to be rung, and all guards to assemble immediately. Katal suddenly arrives, his powerful landing causing a tremor that kicks up dust and debris. The guard captain is shocked by his sudden appearance. Katal greets them and asks if they are the guards. The guards are bewildered and cautious. They wonder if he is the source of the noise and whether he is an enemy. One of the guards notices Katal's gray hair and the scar on his chest, and realizes with a shock that he might be the legendary Ashen Barbarian. As Katal approaches them, the guards raise their weapons and warn him not to come any closer, or they will attack. Katal calmly tells them he is not their enemy and hopes they will calm down. One of the guards nervously asks him what he wants from them. Katal points his finger in a certain direction, and the guard asks him what he means by pointing to the city gate. Katal expresses his desire to visit their territory, and the guards are shocked by what he said. The scene shifts to a room, where the guard captain asks Katal if his purpose is merely to pass through. Katal replies that he would like to stay for a while if possible, but he doesn't know for how long. The captain asks for his name, and he replies, Katal. When the captain asks for any proof of identity or someone who can confirm his identity, Katal says he has nothing of the sort. Katal remembers the crest Melina gave him, recalling her words to show it to the Akasha family if he ever got out of the snowfield. He presents the crest and asks if this is sufficient. Katal explains that it is the crest of the Akasha family, and he received it from a descendant of that lineage. The captain recognized the name as the Merchant family from the kingdom of Dinian. The captain recalls hearing about a merchant family that came to the snowfield a few years ago and notes that the Akasha family's influence has grown rapidly recently after a change in the family head. Katal asks again if the crest is enough to confirm his identity. The captain says it doesn't look fake, but it's hard to confirm since it's not from their kingdom. The captain decides that although the crest isn't a complete confirmation, it is useful. He allows Katal to enter, but on one condition. He clarifies that the condition is to confirm that he is not a dangerous person. The captain explains that there are 3 other people with unconfirmed identities also trying to enter the territory. The condition is that Katal must form a team with them and they must clear a nearby dungeon to prove they pose no threat. Katal finds this condition easier than he expected. Katal agrees to the captain's condition, but the captain adds another one. The second condition is that after clearing the dungeon, Katal must report all information about the operation to them. Katal understands the captain's clever plan to have the people with unknown identities watch each other, and through their reports, he will be able to expose any suspicious ones among them. The captain changes the subject, flustered, and asks Katal if he is really a barbarian. Katal confirms that he is indeed a barbarian. The captain expresses his surprise, admitting he has never seen a barbarian like him before and had thought they were just an ignorant race, then ends the conversation and tells him to set off. The scene shifts to a waiting room, where a man named Alessandro Tyrannus, a supposed holy knight, complains about having to enter a dungeon with a scoundrel who takes advantage of people. A thief named Kasan Hak retorts, sarcastically asking if the old man is venting his anger on him because another thief scammed him out of all his money. Alessandro gets angry and asks how a thief dares to insult a holy knight. Kasan mocks him, questioning if real holy knights wear worn-out armor, and says if he were a real knight, he wouldn't be here in the first place. He concludes that Alessandro is just a wandering warrior, and that they are both the same kind of insects. Alessandro erupts in anger and threatens to fight. Kasan scoffs at him, asking if he thinks his shabby armor will protect him. The third team member, a priestess, intervenes and asks them to stop. The priestess, Hayez of Calusia, expresses her concern about having to clear a dungeon with these people. The guard captain enters and tells them the minimum for entering the dungeon is 4 people, and that someone else will be joining them. The priestess hopes the last person is normal, and the captain tells her she can judge for herself as he has just arrived. Katal enters the room, and the existing team members are shocked by his presence. Katal cheerfully asks them if they are his team members. The team members react in shock. Alessandro notes his massive size, the priestess wonders if he is human, and Kasan feels the immense pressure emanating from him. Katal says hello. The guard captain tells them they can introduce themselves while he steps out for a moment. Katal begins by introducing himself, saying he is Katal, a barbarian. He then asks the thief for his name, who hesitantly introduces himself as Kasan Hak. He moves on to the holy knight, who introduces himself as Alessandro Tyrannus, and Katal asks him if he uses holy power. Alessandro nervously explains that he is a somewhat special holy knight and cannot use it. The priestess introduces herself as a priestess of Calusia, the god of lies and deceit. Katal asks her why her identity isn't confirmed since she is a priestess. She explains that the god she serves is not highly regarded. After the introductions are complete, the guard captain announces that if they are ready, they should set off. Silence and tension fill the air as the team makes their way. The accompanying guard announces their arrival. The guard points to the dungeon entrance. He explains that it is a 3-floor dungeon, and the monsters that appear inside are undead. The objective is to clear it and find a crest inside. Katal asks Kasan to explain the plan before they begin. He starts to explain, and when he addresses Katal as Sir, Katal cheerfully tells him to drop the formalities because they are comrades. Kasan assigns the roles, saying Katal and the warrior, Alessandro, will form the front line while he will check for traps. He adds that the priestess will support the battle from the rear with her divine powers. Katal agrees to the plan, which confuses Kasan. Katal then enthusiastically announces that they will set off. The team enters the dark dungeon, with Katal leading the way. Inside, Kasan notes the pitch-black darkness and the absence of the usual traps or keys, finding it suspiciously ordinary. Suddenly, Kasan stops the group, pointing out that there is a monster, although Katal sees nothing. He points to the bone fragments scattered on the ground, explaining that they are skeletons that will rise and attack them if they get any closer. Kasan realized to himself that the guard captain knew about this, and that this dungeon was not just a test, but a way to get rid of troublesome outsiders. Katal thinks about the word skeletons. Alessandro explains that skeletons are powerful monsters that keep moving even if they are injured or their limbs are cut off. He adds that their defense is high because they are made of bone, making the dungeon's difficulty higher than expected. Kasan takes the lead again, telling the priestess to prepare her divine power, Alessandro to ready his shield, and Katal to get ready as well. He explains that his role is to exploit opportunities during the fight, and advises them to target the skeleton's weak point, the neck, and to strike it multiple times due to its toughness. Katal thinks that Kasan is a good leader. As soon as they advance, a skeleton rises from the ground. The team members prepare for battle. but Katal simply raises his hand. With a single easy blow, he shatters the skeleton's skull. He then blows the magical dust off his hand. The rest of the team is completely stunned. Katal comments to Kasan that he was right, the skeletons don't move after their heads are crushed. Kasan laughs nervously and explains that's not what he meant. Smashing a skeleton's bones with a single blow is nearly impossible, even for skilled swordsmen, unless they can use aura, which means Katal's strength is beyond comprehension. Kasan continues his thoughts, explaining that the only way to defeat a skeleton enhanced by dungeon magic is to repeatedly attack its neck to sever the neck bone, much like felling a tree. He concludes that what Katal did, shattering the skeleton's head and turning it to powder with a single blow, is logically impossible. He admits to himself that he knew Katal was strong from the first moment, but he never imagined he was this strong. The team members look at Katal in shock, and Alessandro wonders if he is really human. Katal simply says they should keep moving forward. The rest of the team immediately responds, agreeing nervously, and Katal finds their sudden haste amusing. As they continue on their way, Katal plays with a skeleton's skull. Suddenly, a large group of skeletons confronts them, and everyone prepares for a tough battle. But Katal stops them and asks for a favor. He asks to handle these skeletons himself, justifying it by saying he has some things he wants to check. The team members immediately agree, awed by his power. Katal thanks them. Alessandro wonders what he intends to do. Katal approaches the skeletons, finding their structure interesting. One of the skeletons begins to attack him, and he seems to be analyzing its movements and structure. He then addresses one as if it were a training partner, asking it what it will do now. The skeleton attacks him with its sword. Katal easily dodges the blow. He then grabs the skeleton's hand and asks with a smile what it will do about this. He then breaks the skeleton's arm with his bare hands, and the skeleton is surprised by what happened and feels insulted. He then skillfully catches its fallen sword with his other hand. Katal mocks the situation, commenting on the skeleton's ability to switch hands. When the skeleton attacks, Katal grabs its hand again. He then breaks the blade and dismantles the skeleton's arm. The skeleton continues to attack, but Katal dodges it with ease. He blocks the skeleton's direct blow with his hands, smiling and expressing admiration for the skeleton possessing intelligence. One of the team members groans in disbelief. Alessandro is completely stunned as he realizes the reality of Katal's seemingly impossible strength. Alessandro thinks to himself that this is a true barbarian. Katal removes the skeleton's skull and then crushes it under his foot. He then apologizes to the team for keeping them waiting, but the team members, now in a state of awe, tell him he can do whatever he wants. When Katal suggests they continue, the team nervously agrees. They reach the entrance to the second floor. An exhausted Kasan suggests they take a short break. Katal agrees, much to Kasan's relief. During their break, Katal says he has some questions about the dungeon. The priestess Hayez invites him to ask. Katal begins his talk by shyly admitting that he lacks a lot of knowledge. Hayez encourages him, saying that the desire to learn is a wonderful quality, and asks him what he is curious about. Katal notes that the dungeon was very close to the territory. He asks if the presence of dungeons and monsters near where people live isn't a problem. Hayez explains that dungeon monsters don't usually come out, and that although there are exceptions, they are dealt with beforehand. Kasan adds that dungeons appear naturally, sometimes as caves or towers. He points out that most of them appear near large population centers. Hayez adds that when a dungeon appears, the territory assesses its danger level, and then people like them are sent to deal with it. Katal asks if they appear within the territory itself, and the priestess clarifies that they appear at a certain distance from populated areas. Katal then asks if there is a reward for successfully clearing the dungeon. Hayez confirms this, explaining that there is usually a boss on the top floor, and defeating it grants various rewards, and that the rewards in a dungeon of this level would be very good. Katal smiles and thinks that it's like a game, and when Hayez asks him, he claims he was talking to himself. He asks one last question: who makes these dungeons? The team is taken aback by the question, and Hayez answers that they appear naturally and no one makes them. Katal finds this strange, pointing out that they appear near population centers, as if they were made to be explored. He continues his analysis, saying that they appear near where people live and lure them with rewards. He concludes that it seems too artificial to be a natural phenomenon. Hayez is astonished, realizing the truth in his words. She admits that she never thought about it before because it seemed self-evident. Kasan thinks to himself that he never questioned it because it was an accepted principle in fact, and wonders how this barbarian could question such a truth. He concludes his thoughts by stating that barbarians are an ignorant and savage race, cruel and merciless beings, and that this fact has not changed. Kasan continues to think to himself, wondering if this barbarian is really normal. Katal gets the team's attention, asking them if they have rested enough. The team members nervously confirm that they have. Katal cheerfully tells them they should set off again. The team ventures deeper into the dungeon. They encounter something, and Katal asks about it. Kasan explains that it's a treasure chest, one of the labyrinth's rewards, and tells Katal he can have it if he can open it. He adds that opening a chest of this level requires a skilled thief with a proven ability in lockpicking. Kasan laments that a thief with such skill wouldn't need to enter a dungeon in the first place, suggesting they should abandon it. But Katal simply tells Kasan to open it. Kasan is shocked. Katal points out that this is a treasure chest and Kasan is a thief. Katal enthusiastically explains that opening treasure chests is the essence of a thief's work, and that he is excited to see a thief's skills for himself. Kasan thinks that Katal is not wrong, but there's a problem. If he could do it, he wouldn't be here in the first place. His internal struggle reveals his lack of self-confidence. He is just a minor thief, not even recognized by the Thieves' Guild, and he doesn't actually possess lock-picking skills. He can't tell Katal the truth, fearing that the anticipation in his eyes will turn to disappointment. Katal intervenes when he sees his hesitation, asking if he is incapable of even doing this, calling him useless. Driven by fear, Kasan agrees to try. As he works, he feels Katal's piercing gaze from behind him, thinking in terror that he won't survive if he fails. He desperately tries to remember the skills he saw another thief use when he was working as his porter. He puts his life on the line and focuses with all his might. Katal looks at him, puzzled by this intense effort. With a click, Kasan succeeds, announcing with tears in his eyes that the chest is open. Hiez expresses her genuine admiration, saying it's amazing, and that she never expected to see a skilled thief open a treasure chest herself. Katal congratulates him on his impressive work. Kasan goes through a moment of existential crisis. He had always prided himself on doing his best to survive, but at this moment, he questions this belief for the first time in his life, wondering if he has truly been doing his best all this time, and with that, Kasan loses his pride. Katal asks about the value of the treasure, and Kasan estimates it's enough for an average family to live comfortably for about a month. Katal asks Kasan to organize the rewards. As Kasan begins to sort the treasure, he suddenly screams in terror. The team cautiously advances and continues on their way. They find another skeleton lying on the ground, and Katal tells them to wait. Katal notices 4 skulls, deduces there are 4 skeletons in total, and announces that he will take care of 3 of them. The team is stunned. Katal tells them with a smile that he will leave the last skeleton for them. Kasan realizes this is a real fight and a test for them, and the rest of the team understands the situation and agrees. The skeletons begin to assemble themselves from a pile of bones, a sight Kasan finds terrifying. The 4 skeletons rise to face them. Kasan orders everyone to engage, and the priestess Hiez begins to chant her prayer. The skeletons rush towards them. As one leaps towards Kasan, Katal grabs the rest of the skeletons, telling them not to spoil this rare scene. A skeleton attacks Alessandro, who blocks it with his shield. Alessandro dodges the attack, and Kasan jumps in to attack the same skeleton. Hiez casts the Shadow of Illusion spell, which hits the skeleton and makes it stagger. Katal watches and laughs, commenting that it's rare to see a textbook example of organized party combat. He eliminates the 3 skeletons in his hands and then says he can now enjoy the show. Kasan continues to try and attack the skeleton. The team members realize that Katal is testing them. The last skeleton, left for the team, seems confused after its comrades disappeared. Kasan thinks to himself that if they show weakness, they will die. After the battle ends, the team appears extremely exhausted. Katal thinks that those who came to the snowfield were all strong. The team advances, and although the monsters on the 3rd floor were also skeletons, thanks to Katal's leadership, they progressed without much difficulty, until they finally reached their destination. They arrive at the deepest room of the dungeon. There, they find the dungeon boss, a skeletal knight sitting on a throne. Hiez is shocked, wondering why such a being is here. Katal asks if this monster is different from the others, and Hiez confirms that it is very strong. She explains that the skeletal knight is an opponent that can only be faced by those at the knight level, and this monster is beyond their ability to handle, then asks what would happen if they decided to turn back. Kasan explains that in that case, the territory would conduct an investigation, and if they found the decision was reasonable, the matter would usually be resolved without issues. Katal describes the team's decision to withdraw as reasonable. The skeletal knight sitting on its throne radiates an ominous energy. Katal approaches it, admiring that it's a skeleton that can maintain its own form. The skeletal knight rises from its throne and draws its sword. Hiez warns of its danger. She tries to block the blow it unleashed with a shield, but it shatters, so Alessandro intervenes to block the blow with his shield. The shockwave knocks the team members back, but Catal remains standing, unaffected. Alessandro expresses his disbelief at the power of that single attack. The skeletal knight rushes towards Catal. Catal calmly watches its approach. With a single blow, he completely obliterates it, and the skeletal knight shatters entirely. The rest of the team is completely stunned. Catal dusts off his hands and simply asks if that's all. A new treasure chest appears, and Catal calls out to Kassan. He asks if he can open it, and Kassan replies in a panic that it's impossible because it's protected by a high-level lock beyond his skills. Catal comments that it's a shame, and Kassan agrees that they should abandon the chest. Catal ignores this and prepares to smash the chest open by force, shocking Kassan. With a powerful blow, Catal shatters the chest and opens it. Catal comments that the reward might be bigger this way and asks Kassan to collect the loot. Kassan thinks to himself that he has never heard of smashing a treasure chest by force and wonders why Catal asked him to open the first chest if he could simply smash it. They exit the dungeon, which begins to disappear. Kassan explains that when a dungeon is fully cleared, it disappears, and he concludes that there was no secret room this time. The concept of a secret room interests Catal, and Kassan tells him they exist but are rare, which Catal finds interesting. The guard captain is waiting for them, shocked at their swift return. The captain asks about the dungeon, and Catal replies that it was very satisfying. The captain tells them he will follow the exit procedures and asks them to accompany him one by one. The priestess is questioned first, and she reports no major problems. The guard captain asks her if she thinks the barbarian can stay in the territory. The guard captain thinks to himself, hesitant about the decision to let the barbarian stay, noting that his ambiguity only shows when he is talked about. He concludes that clearing the dungeon was just a means, and the real goal was to expose dangerous individuals. During Kassan's questioning, he mentions that Catal doesn't seem like the type to cause trouble. Alessandro reports that the barbarian is brutally strong but hasn't harmed anyone, concluding that he is completely different from ordinary barbarians. When Catal is questioned, he praises his team members, commending Kassan for his excellent work in disarming traps and trying to open the chest, Alessandro for holding the front line as a warrior, and Hiez's prayers that supported them in battle. The captain finds this mutual praise unusual, as strangers forced to work together usually don't end up praising each other. The captain makes his decision and grants them permission to enter, but warns them they will be expelled if they cause any trouble. He then gives them the reward for clearing the dungeon and asks them to divide it among themselves, which impresses Kassan, who notes that guards sometimes seize the reward for themselves. Catal cheerfully announces that the reward should be divided fairly. The other members are confused and refuse their share, saying they are fine without it. But Catal insists that they cleared the dungeon as a team, so the reward must be shared fairly, and he accepts no objections. He then enthusiastically suggests they celebrate by drinking at a nearby tavern. The team nervously agrees, but they are actually terrified and wish they could just go home safely. As the team enters the territory, the captain thinks about the report he will file, focusing on the fact that a barbarian eliminated a skeletal knight in a single blow. He concludes that Catal is no ordinary barbarian, but brutally strong, at least at the knight level, and that he is an anomalous and legendary being. The captain orders one of his subordinates to guard the gate while he goes to report to the Lord. The captain enters the throne room to deliver his report. The Lord of the Barcan territory, Luke Barcan, asks him about the matter. The captain informs him of the appearance of a barbarian in the territory. When the Lord asks if he granted him permission to enter, the captain confirms, explaining that he saw no major problem with him. The Lord asks what the problem is then. The captain explains that the problem is that the barbarian is so strong he might pose a problem. The Lord asks how strong he is. The captain tells him he eliminated a skeletal knight in a single blow. The Lord repeats this information, noting that defeating such a monster requires at least the strength of a knight. He reflects on the nature of barbarians as simple, uneducated beings who solve everything with brute force. He concludes that Catal is at least first rank, and the captain confirms this is the most likely scenario, without ruling out the possibility of him being even stronger. The Lord considers that the presence of a warrior this powerful, a barbarian who believes might is right, will cause a headache. He orders him to be summoned. He explains that the mere presence of someone so powerful wandering the territory is a risk in itself, and that he would rather see him for himself despite the potential danger. When the captain expresses concern for the Lord's safety, the latter reassures him that he has his own knight. A huge armored knight appears behind the throne, shocking the captain. Lord Barcan asks his knight for his opinion. The knight confidently replies that although Katal may be strong, he is still just an ignorant barbarian and would be no match for his swordsmanship skills, which he learned directly from a great swordmaster. The Lord decides he will speak with the barbarian himself and orders him to be summoned. Meanwhile, Katal is celebrating with his team in a tavern. The rest of the team looks completely exhausted by Katal's massive appetite for food and drink. Katal comments that the food is delicious and the place is quiet, and tells them to eat whatever they like on his tab. He turns to Alessandro and verifies that he is a paladin. He then asks him what kind of holy power he uses, because he didn't see him use any in the dungeon. Alessandro nervously explains that he is still in the training phase and his divine power has not yet awakened. Katal comments that this is a pity, and then asks the priestess Hayez if there is a temple for her god, Calusia, nearby. Hayez replies that she doesn't think so, because her god is not widely welcomed. It is explained that Calusia is the god of lies and deceit, an outcast and rejected deity by the general populace. Hayez asks Katal how strong he really is. Katal replies that he is unsure of his rank because he has only recently left the snowfield, and in turn asks them about the strength of the skeletal knight. Hayez explains that to face a skeletal knight, one must be at least second rank, and to defeat it in a single blow as Katal did, one must be first rank. Katal concludes that his power level is considered second rank. At that moment, the panicked tavern owner interrupts them, announcing that the tavern is about to close, terrified by the barbarian's presence. Katal apologizes and asks everyone to leave. When he asks them if they have other plans, they all assert in a panic that they are very busy. Katal expresses his regret and bids them farewell, hoping to see them again. But their collective thought is that they never want to see him again. Later, Katal is resting in a bed at an inn. He is grateful that he could afford the inn thanks to the dungeon rewards. He considers this place a paradise compared to the snowfield. He thinks about his long journey to reach civilization and his desire to explore more. He decides he wants to go on an adventure and considers destinations like the Elf Sanctuary, the Tower of Magic, and the Royal Capital. He is awakened by a violent knock on the door. The guard captain is at the door and apologizes for waking him. The captain informs him that the Lord wants to see him personally. Katal is interested that the master of this land wants to meet him. He cheerfully agrees. As he gets dressed, the captain is puzzled by his easy agreement, wondering if he has come to the right place. As Katal walks through the territory, which he had only seen at night before, he finds the daytime scene absolutely wonderful. He thinks happily that if this is the kind of lucky fantasy he's going to have, he welcomes it any time. The accompanying guard is bewildered and decides he should distract Katal as much as possible. The guard captain announces the barbarian's arrival to the Lord, who orders him to be brought in. Katal enters the throne room. Lord Luke Barkin, the master of the Barkin territory in the kingdom of Gehenthra, welcomes him. They shake hands and Katal expresses his pleasure at meeting the rightful lord of the territory. He introduces himself as Katal the Barbarian. The guard is shocked to see a barbarian bowing his head. The Lord thinks that barbarians never bow their heads because strength is everything to them, and sarcastically comments that if one lives long enough, one will see everything. The Lord comments that Katal has learned proper etiquette and invites him to sit. Katal contemplates the design of the Lord's castle. He notices the knight guarding the Lord and compares the castle to those of the medieval era. He is amazed to see a real knight, just as he had imagined as a child. But the knight was emitting a clear and strong killing intent. The knight thinks that Katal is a fool for showing such an aura in the Lord's presence, and vows that he will not leave here alive. The Lord tells Katal that the reason for his summons is simple. He wants to confirm a few things. Katal agrees and asks what the Lord wants to confirm. When the Lord asks about his origin, Katal replies that he came from the coldest place in the world, a world covered in white. He specifies that he came from the white snowfield, which shocks the Lord and his knight. The Lord realizes that Katal is truly a barbarian from the legends, a fact that is hard to accept. Katal adds that it was a horrific place, and whether the Lord accepts this fact or not is his choice. The Lord changes the subject and asks a different question about how strong Katal is. Katal rephrases the question, saying what matters is how dangerous his strength is. He answers that it's the wrong question because he doesn't know the standards outside the snowfield. The Lord suggests a way to find out his strength, a duel with one of his knights, with the promise of a handsome reward. Katal repeats the word, duel, and the Lord confirms it will not be a battle to the death. Katal smiles and says he likes the idea, feeling excited at the mere thought of dueling a knight. His thoughts reveal his immense excitement, not just to duel a knight, but a knight from a fantasy world, a being who uses mysterious power and aura. Katal thinks excitedly that he is really looking forward to this duel, considering it a chance to witness a real knight's skills up close. In contrast, Lord Barkan thinks that, despite Katal's politeness, a barbarian remains a barbarian, and his beastly nature that enjoys fighting does not change. The two combatants find themselves in a large dueling arena. The Lord announces the start of the match, expressing his hope that no blood will be shed. The knight arrogantly tells Katal to consider it an honor to witness his swordsmanship. Katal replies that he certainly hopes so. The knight is angered by Katal's calmness and vows to show him the vast difference in skill. The knight launches his attack, his sword seemingly multiplying into 3. Katal is surprised by this technique and realizes it is not just an illusion and that the 3 swords are real, and wonders if this is swordsmanship. The knight is impressed by Katal's ability to dodge his attack by a narrow margin, but sees no need to follow up. With a simple flick of Katal's finger, the sword shatters and the knight is confused, wondering what that was. Before he can realize it, Katal grabs his face. He throws him away and the knight is defeated in a single blow. The Lord is in absolute shock, realizing that a first-ranked knight has been defeated in a single blow, and marvels at Katal's overwhelming power. Katal asks if the match is over. The shocked Lord confirms it is. The Lord assesses the situation in his mind. A barbarian defeats a first-ranked knight in a single blow. His power is monstrous, at least at a supernatural level, and the depth of his power is still unknown. He concludes that a barbarian with such power could upset the balance of power in the world. He decides it is time to inform that person, one of the few people in the world who holds the title of Swordmaster. The Lord contemplates the Swordmaster's arrival, wondering if he will be interested in the matter. Suddenly, a white-haired old man appears in the Lord's room. The Lord laughs, saying that the Swordmaster's tastes are as strange as ever, and the other replies that one needs some entertainment in life. The Swordmaster, who is called Cain, asks the Lord to tell him about this interesting matter. Lord Barkan welcomes Swordmaster Cain, expressing his honor at his visit on such short notice. Meanwhile, the knight who faced Katal is recovering in his bed. The Lord visits him and asks about his health. The knight apologizes and says he will be fine in a few days. Swordmaster Cain appears and scolds his student, saying he should be apologizing to him for losing to an unknown barbarian. Cain examines his student, noting that he has no injuries. He thinks that he saw his student's armor completely shattered, and given his condition, it would have been normal for him to die, yet his body is intact. Cain wonders if the barbarian deliberately controlled his power. The Lord agrees, adding that Katal is not just a reckless barbarian, but can control his power with amazing precision. Cain concludes that showing such restraint means Katal's power far exceeds the knight's level, and that he is at least at a supernatural level. Cain sinks into deep thought. Lord Barkan asks for his opinion, comparing Katal's strength to his own. Cain confidently replies that despite Katal's strength, he is a sword master, and that even supernatural power cannot reach him. However, Cain notes that Katal did not use aura and yet possess such immense power. He agrees that this is impossible through normal means and wonders if this is the power of the barbarians of the White Snowfield. The Lord says he didn't believe it at first, but it seems to be true. Cain reflects on the idea of a legendary human coming from the White Snowfield. He wonders if Katal is truly human, or perhaps of another race, but he dismisses the idea of him being from another race. He reasons that if he were, he would not have shown any consideration for humans by sparing the knight's life, and concludes that this must be a misjudgment on his part. Cain is still concerned about the fact that Katal came specifically from the White Snowfield and wonders why he appeared from there, of all places, at this particular time. When the Lord asks him if something is wrong, Cain dismisses it as a matter for another time, grumbling about the strange requests the Emperor always makes. He reassures the Lord that it's nothing to worry about for now. Cain asks if the barbarian is still in the territory, and the Lord confirms he is. Cain decides he must confirm things for himself. Later, the guard captain asks Katal about his future plans. The captain gives Katal his reward for the duel and informs him that the Lord will no longer interfere with his activities within the territory. Katal thinks that although his plans are not set, it would be good to have an officially recognized identity to avoid future trouble. The captain explains that there are ways to achieve this, either get a high-level sponsor or become a mercenary. He elaborates that if he builds a record of achievements as a mercenary and gets recognition from the guild, his identity can be officially recognized. The guard captain thinks that getting a sponsor is the more suitable path for someone with this barbarian strength, as low-rank mercenaries are treated as mere errand boys. But Katal is charmed by the idea of being a mercenary, who takes requests and kills monsters, considering it the essence of fantasy romance. He asks where he should go to become a mercenary, and the captain tells him there is a guild hall. He eagerly asks the captain to guide him, and the bewildered captain agrees. The narrative explains that although some see mercenaries as romantic figures, they actually represent the lowest rung of society for those without official status. Even the strong ones often die in undiscovered dungeons or become scapegoats for dirty work. Upon arriving at the mercenary guild, he finds the place in chaos due to a violent brawl, with two mercenaries cursing at each other, while onlookers bet on the fight. Nearby, a woman asks the receptionist, Rosa, about the new recruits. Rosa sighs, saying they are all weirdos and hopeless. She mentally lists the new recruits: a madman claiming to be a holy knight, a thief, and a nun no one trusts because of the god she worships. Rosa laments that no respectable people have shown up, and wishes for a handsome prince on a white horse to save her from her job. At that moment, Katal enters the guild, surprising her. Katal surveys the place and recognizes it as the guild hall. The fight immediately stops, and everyone stares at the barbarian in shock. Katal approaches the reception desk and announces his desire to become a mercenary. A flustered Rosa asks him his purpose for doing so. Katal explains that he has various reasons, but he heard he could get official status by working as a mercenary. Rosa confirms this, but warns him that he will need a solid track record of achievements. Katal agrees, so Rosa registers him for 5 silver coins, asking for his name and age. He gives his name as Katal but doesn't know his age, so she jots down an approximate one. After completing the registration, she gives him his mercenary tag, warning him not to lose it as it symbolizes his status. Katal accepts the tag. He immediately asks about available quests, expressing his desire to start right away. Rosa shows him the list of quests available to him. Katal is surprised to find that the list only contains F-rank quests, such as gathering herbs, cleaning basements, sewers and streets, and night watch patrols. Rosa nervously explains that as he is currently an F-rank mercenary, these are the only tasks available to him, and she is worried he might get angry because of his pride as a barbarian. As she begins to explain that he will be able to take on harder tasks after building a work record, Katal interrupts her, saying he will take one of the quests. He points to the herb gathering quest. Rosa is surprised and asks if he is sure, and Katal replies that as long as it's a job that needs to be done, there's no problem. Katal asks where to find the herbs required for his quest. The receptionist, Rosa, explains that he will need to go out of the village and shows him a picture of the required plant. Katal confirms his understanding and says he will be back soon, to which Rosa hesitantly replies. Rosa is left bewildered by his calmness and acceptance. In the forest, Katal contemplates the image of the herb and wonders if it is used for treating wounds, noting its strange appearance. He decides to begin his first mission as a mercenary. About an hour later, Katal returns to the mercenary guild. He presents a huge pile of herbs and asks if this quantity is enough. Rosa is shocked by the large amount. When she examines the herbs, she is surprised by their excellent condition, noting that most mercenaries pick them carelessly. Katal proudly declares that despite his appearance, he is quite confident in his delicate touch. Rosa thanks him for his hard work and gives him his reward, a single silver coin. Katal realizes that this amount is barely enough to buy the cheapest meal. However, he feels deeply moved, as this is the first money he has honestly earned through labor. He tells the astonished Rosa that he is very satisfied and asks if he can take another mission immediately. Rosa is confused, believing it's impossible for him to be happy with such a meager reward. Katal explains that he wants to work as much as possible, as long as the day is not yet over. Rosa wonders why he seems so happy. She comes to the conclusion that this new mercenary is also a weirdo. Time passes and Katal chooses the warehouse cleaning mission for the day. Rosa notes that this is his 3rd cleaning mission after gathering herbs, and wonders in confusion if barbarians like to clean. Hesitantly, Rosa approves his request. Katal arrives at the warehouse and announces that he has come to clean. The warehouse owner panics upon seeing a barbarian. The task of cleaning the warehouse and moving the goods was easy for him. His next task was street sweeping. Although controlling his strength was difficult at first, he completed the task without major issues. Someone was watching him from afar through a scope. The observer wonders why Katal is acting this way, as he is aware that Katal is at least supernaturally strong, a man whose power could affect an entire kingdom. The observer continues to think in confusion. This barbarian, who is supposed to solve everything with force, is doing menial jobs. What's stranger is that he's not doing them half-heartedly, but taking them seriously. While the observer is completely bewildered, Katal feels satisfaction and accomplishment from his simple work. Later, Katal receives his pay. Rosa tells him this is his reward for completing 15 missions, which is 15 silver coins. Katal thanks her and tells her he will be back the next day to start his 2nd day in civilization. Katal walks through the city, enjoying the sights of daily life. He spots a building that turns out to be a library. When he enters, the librarian panics. He asks her if she minds him reading some books, which only increases her terror. Catal begins to read quietly. The swordmaster watches him in confusion, wondering if the barbarians of the snowfield are more civilized than others. Catal discovers from a history book that the Empire has won the war. He connects this information to Melina's visit a few years ago, who was on her way to sell weapons to the kingdom that lost the war. He reads that the Empire is now a dominant power, and that the kingdom of Barkan, where he is essentially a vassal state. The book goes on to explain that the Empire has swallowed half of the human world and continues its aggressive expansion. Catal thinks about the idea of world domination. He decides that's enough of human affairs and turns to what he really wanted to study: non-human races. He picks up a book that collects information on non-humans, realizing that the fantasies written in it are existing realities in this world. Catal continues his reading, learning about Mantamea, the tunnels of the dwarves, and the richest caves in the world. He reads about the fairy village Pizarabia and the sky city of the Celestials, Lagmeria. Then he reads about Elfo Sagrado, the sacred sanctuary of all elves whose location no one knows. Catal thinks that thanks to the information he got from the elf queen, he now has what it takes to enter this sanctuary. He is surprised to read that there are other places similar to the White Snowfield. The book describes demonic realms, places that do not allow human presence and are filled with twisted and deformed beings, and mentions that there are 5 particularly vast realms. These 5 realms are the Silent Forest, the Abyss, the Deep Sea, the Bottomless Pit, and the White Snowfield. The book states that terrifying beings called the Others inhabit these realms but cannot cross over into the human world. Catal marvels at the vastness of this world, as the snowfield alone was immense. He decides that this is all he can learn here and prepares to leave. He thanks the terrified librarian, who stammers a reply. Later, Catal returns to the Mercenary Guild and asks Rosa about today's missions. Rosa hands him the quest list. Meanwhile, Swordmaster Kane, who has been observing Catal for the second day, concludes that he is truly strange and decides he must meet him personally. Later that evening, Catal walks happily, having completed another 12 missions. He thinks that the small tasks are accumulating, and at this rate, the day he is recognized as a true mercenary will come soon. Suddenly, he feels someone following him and stops. He turns to face a hooded figure, Kane. Kane is shocked that Catal noticed him. Catal asks the person who has been following him all day about their purpose. Kane thinks to himself how Catal could have possibly noticed him. He is stunned because he had concealed his presence with aura, something that even those with the sharpest senses are not supposed to notice. When Catal sees the hooded figure's silence, he assumes it's a thief and prepares to fight, which confuses Kane. Catal thinks that even in safe places there are thieves. Kane panics, thinking that Catal won't believe him if he tells him he is a swordmaster. In contrast, Catal sees this thief as an opportunity to get a good achievement for his mercenary record. Kane is bewildered by the misunderstanding. He then realizes that this situation could be a good opportunity. Since Catal is mistaking him for a thief, he can use the direct confrontation to learn about his true strength and identity. The confrontation between Catal and Kane begins. Suddenly, Catal disappears from before Kane's eyes. Catal instantly appears behind Kane, who is shocked. Kane realizes that if he had stayed put, Catal would have grabbed him by the neck. Kane uses a burst of energy to quickly move away, and Catal comments on his speed. Kane is shocked, realizing he was almost caught, and even more surprisingly, he felt no flow of aura from Catal. Catal finds it interesting that Kane was able to move so quickly with a purely human body. Kane decides this is no longer a test, and that he will use his full power. Kane attacks, but Catal easily dodges him. Kane is shocked again because he couldn't react even after expanding his senses. Catal grabs Kane's arm, who feels an immense force as if his whole body is being pulled by force. In pain and unable to match him in strength, Kane decides to release his full power. Green light mana envelops Kane's body, surprising Catal. The force compels him to retreat, while Kane looks at the energy in his hand. Catal still believes Kane is a thief, and comments that thieves these days have various techniques. Kane tells him to stop this nonsense. Kane thinks to himself how Catal is mistaking manifested mana, a level only the best can reach, for a thief's technique. He concludes that Catal genuinely believes this. Kane explains to himself that manifested mana can tear through solid steel, and a human body should be torn apart on contact, but Catal didn't get a single scratch. Kane marvels at Catal's ability to withstand it with his bare body, while Catal comments that Kane is using something interesting. Kane decides to end it and draws his sword, but Catal stops him with his finger before he can draw it. Kane tries to pull the sword with all his might against Ketal's finger, but he is unable and is shocked and desperate, realizing that this is the end of the line for him. Ketal looks at the defeated Kane, thinking that this is what thieves are like in this fantasy world. The guard captain arrives at the scene completely confused, wondering what is happening and why Swordmaster Kane is here. When he sees the scene, he assumes the barbarian has attacked the Swordmaster. Ketal tells him that he has caught this thief. Then, holding the defeated Kane, he asks if turning him over to the guards will count as work experience as a mercenary. The guard captain watches the scene in shock, disbelieving that Swordmaster Kane, someone who has reached the rank of the Transcendent, has been captured in such a humiliating way by the barbarian. The captain tries to explain that Kane is not a thief, while Ketal assumes they are acquaintances. The guard pays his respects to Swordmaster Kane, the only swordmaster in the kingdom of Gehenthra. Ketal asks in confusion if this thief holds such a great title. He insists that Kane is a thief who attacked him for his silver coins. The captain asserts that this person is the swordmaster and that he couldn't mistake his face, to which Ketal replies by asking if he is a magician using a disguise spell. The captain replies that a high-level magician who could do such a thing would be respected just as much as a swordmaster, prompting Ketal to wonder if swordmaster is just another name for thieves. The captain once again affirms that Kane is truly the swordmaster. The captain decides he must report this matter to the Lord. The Lord is shocked, wondering if Master Kane has lost. Later, Ketal feels regretful, thinking he should have listened to the whole story. Kane also admits fault, saying the blame is on him for not saying anything, and the two sit in an atmosphere of mutual regret. The Lord thinks to himself, disbelieving that Kane was defeated by the barbarian. He concludes that this barbarian is stronger than the swordmaster. He analyzes the situation, noting that although there are different levels among the Transcendent, and Kane might be at the lowest rank among them, the defeat of a swordmaster by a barbarian is unbelievable. This means Ketal is an uncontrollable force. The Lord finds the situation exhausting and decides to step aside and let the two talk to clear up the misunderstanding between them. He leaves them to talk quietly. Kane reflects on his complete defeat, feeling humiliated and exhausted. He formally introduces himself as Kane, the Swordmaster. When Ketal asks if Swordmaster is his family name, Kane explains that once one reaches this rank, human titles lose their meaning. Ketal understands and asks if the technique he used was a swordmaster's technique. Kane displays his aura, and Ketal is impressed, declaring that now that he knows it's a swordmaster's technique, he finds it wonderful. Kane explains that this is the manifestation of mysticism, also known as aura. Ketal realizes the green energy he saw earlier was aura. He eagerly asks how to use it. Kane explains that mysticism must be controlled and manifested. Ketal asks if mysticism is like mana. Kane clarifies that mysticism is the mysterious energy itself. If you use it as mana, you become a magician, while handling it as aura is what makes a swordsman. After understanding that both mages and swordsmen use mysticism, Ketal shyly admits that he still lacks knowledge and asks Kane to teach him his technique. He insistently asks Kane to teach him. Kane is surprised by the request, asking why he is asking for guidance when he is the stronger one. Ketal replies that if Kane had used his sword in their fight, the outcome might have been different. Ketal expresses his excitement to learn, while Kane worries for his pride, anticipating it might be shattered further. Ketal thinks that what he learned of basic swordsmanship in his past life does not compare to this art. This is the true fantasy swordsmanship that uses mysterious aura. Kane begins to explain, stating that the hallmark of his school of swordsmanship is the embodiment of illusion and reality, and asks Ketal what he saw when he fought his student. Ketal realizes the knight he defeated was Kane's student and describes how his sword strikes split into 3 real attacks. Ketal understands that this is what is meant by embodiment. Kane explains that his style focuses more on technique than raw power. He adds that swordsmanship is the art of fusing the sword with aura to use mysticism, and one who reaches the end of this path is called a sword master. Ketal is fascinated by the aura, while Kane still can't believe he is teaching a barbarian. Kane decides to show him directly instead of explaining. Kane demonstrates his technique, delivering a powerful sword strike. Ketal observes that the single sword strike has split into 5 strikes. Kane explains that while many techniques use aura to create illusions, his style alone makes those illusions real. When he asks for his opinion on the skill, Ketal confidently replies that he thinks he can do it too. Kane is shocked and calls his words nonsense. Kane thinks that he dedicated his entire life to reaching this level, and that it's impossible for Ketal to imitate it just by seeing it once. Ketal says it's faster to simply show him and grabs an axe. He takes a stance and attacks, moving the axe with immense speed. At first, Cain thinks it's just fast movements based on brute force. But the attack leaves 5 real marks on the wall, mimicking the effect of Cain's technique. Smoke rises from Katal's axe, and he then asks Cain for his opinion. Cain admits to himself that the effect was similar to his technique, although it was produced only by immense speed and power. Cain argues that what Katal did was just a fast swing without technique, and that true swordsmanship is for actual combat. Katal retorts by asking if the similar result isn't enough. Cain is frustrated because he knows Katal is not wrong. In a fit of frustration, he grabs his sword and challenges Katal again. Cain unleashes his ultimate attack, making Katal wonder if his body is split. Cain explains that this is the body separation technique, achieved by controlling aura to its utmost limits. He challenges Katal to imitate this technique. Katal responds with his own attack, using his axe in a whirlwind of pure physical force, which completely overwhelms Cain's technique. After Katal's attack destroys the arena, he asks Cain for his opinion. Cain collapses to his knees in complete despair. He is devastated, crying that his swordsmanship and everything he has built his entire life has become meaningless, and he finds this situation unbelievable. Katal notes that Cain is more mentally fragile than he thought. Katal approaches the defeated Cain and praises his swordsmanship, downplaying his own ability by saying he was just swinging his axe very fast and that it's not real swordsmanship. Cain realizes Katal is right, admitting that Katal's technique was real and not just a deceptive image, and that he himself could never reach that level of mysticism. Cain begins to compose himself, convincing himself that his swordsmanship is still very valuable because he is the only one who can embody illusion and reality. He enthusiastically declares that his swordsmanship is flawless, and that the barbarian is simply insane. He shouts that for someone to move fast enough to create a real illusion without aura is beyond human limits. Seeing this emotional outburst, Katal asks if Cain can teach him the true meaning of technique. Cain apologizes for his outburst, and Katal replies that he understands. Cain begins his lesson, explaining that to use true technique one must first learn to control aura, but to do that one must first understand mysticism. He explains that no mage, swordsman, or sorcerer can reach a high level without understanding mysticism, and that believers in gods are the only ones who can bypass this. Katal asks if divine power is something separate. Cain confirms this, explaining that miracles are granted directly from the gods and are not tied to personal abilities. Katal says he understands. Cain defines mysticism as the mysterious power within oneself, and how it is used is what determines everything. He explains that to use aura, acquire mana, or control spirits, one must first understand this mysticism. He mentions that there are 5 stages of mysticism, the simplest of which is unveiling the mystery, a state of knowing, perceiving, and sensing it. When Ketil asks if anyone can feel it, Cain answers no, explaining that if one is not gifted, one cannot even sense it. He adds that those who can sense it are called third rank. He explains that there are 5 levels granted based on the ability to handle mysticism. He lists the 5 general classifications: third rank, second rank, first rank, transcendent, and hero. Katal suddenly remembers his conversation with Melina, realizing this is what she was talking about. Cain explains that the ranking system is just a convenience, and that the gap between each level is enormous. Katal confirms his understanding, and Cain announces the start of the lesson. Cain declares that the first stage is unveiling the mystery. He instructs Katal to expand his senses to their utmost limit to feel the mystery, explaining that it means awakening senses he has never felt before. He asks him to feel the breeze, the touch of the earth, and the shifting winds to distinguish the unique movements within them. Katal contemplates, trying to follow the instructions, but he opens his eyes and says he feels nothing. Cain is surprised, admitting he thought someone as strong as Katal would feel it easily. He explains that the physically strong often have a better chance of sensing the mystery, but he assumes Katal might be an exception. He wonders if it has to do with the peculiarity of the white snowfield. Katal replies that he doesn't know, and that no one he knew in the snowfield had ever felt the mystery before. Cain decides to try another method, transferring power directly to Katal to guide him. Katal asks if he will transfer aura to him. Cain confirms it's similar and urges him to prepare. Cain places his hand on Katal and instructs him to relax his body and focus his senses inward to feel the flowing power. But Cain is shocked, wondering what kind of body this is and if it is truly human. He thinks that Katal's body feels like solid rock due to the density of his muscles. When Katal notices his hesitation, Cain apologizes and says he will begin. Cain starts to transfer aura, believing that what's important is to awaken the latent mystery. But he is shocked again, realizing he cannot find the mysterious path within Katal's body. He corrects himself, saying he cannot reach it. He describes the experience as diving into a bottomless sea, where his aura touches nothing, or like pressing through a space of overwhelming density. Cain declares that it's no use. Katal asks worriedly if this means he lacks talent. Cain clarifies that's not it. In the end, one must find the path themselves. Katal says he knows that, but Cain drops the bombshell that he couldn't find that path inside Katal's body. Katal asks in shock if this means he can't sense the mystery at all, but Cain denies it, explaining he couldn't even confirm whether the path existed or not. He explains that Katal's body is strange, and that it is so deep and heavy that the aura couldn't properly reach its interior. Cain thinks that this is the first time he has seen something like this, where Katal's pure physical strength prevents aura. Katal is frustrated, wondering if even a swordmaster can't help him. Cain admits it's hard to say for sure because he couldn't confirm anything. He concludes that he couldn't even tell if the path of mystery existed within Katal, and suggests he visit other swordmasters more skilled in handling aura, or perhaps visit the Tower of Magic for answers. Cain apologizes to Katal. Katal says it's fine and that this is enough for now, admitting there's still a possibility for him to learn. He thanks him, saying he learned a lot from this encounter. Cain thinks that every barbarian he has met so far has been wild, plundering non-stop and desiring only drink and violence, but this barbarian is different. Cain asks Katal if he has ever considered settling down in this kingdom. When Katal inquires about the meaning, Cain explains that he means declaring loyalty to the kingdom and receiving a title. He adds that with Katal's strength, he would receive a high rank, and that Cain himself would be his sponsor. Katal immediately refuses, declaring he doesn't want to be tied down by anything. Cain had hoped in his heart that if he could bring this barbarian to the royal palace, perhaps they could break free from the empire's dominance. Cain tries to persuade him again, wondering if getting a noble title isn't appealing enough. Katal replies that he will enjoy his own pleasures. Cain understands his decision and accepts it. Katal thanks him again and promises he will not forget this favor. As Cain walks away, he thinks about the ridiculous idea he had. He thought for a moment he could control Katal, but he realizes no one can. This barbarian acts only according to his own will and thoughts. He concludes that Katal might be more troublesome than other barbarians because he is unpredictable. Later, Cain and Lord Barkin discuss the matter. Cain sighs, wondering what the Emperor is thinking with his desire to conquer the demonic realms. The Lord realizes that the Emperor desires this conquest. He asks if the Emperor is serious, noting that scouts are dying in vain under the guise of reconnaissance. Cain confirms his seriousness, speculating that the Emperor might believe he is the reincarnation of the ancient Emperor. The Lord says this is a matter for the future, as they have not yet conquered all human lands. The Lord concludes that the invasion will happen one day. Cain confirms this, adding that a summons could come at any time because their region is also imperial land. Cain laments that the world is strange enough, and now the Emperor is half mad too. The Lord wonders if some rumors are true. Cain confirms the rumors are true, declaring that the demons have begun to move. He explains that, although it's not confirmed, dungeons are appearing at an abnormal rate, and there are rumors that the anomaly of the demonic world has begun to leak outside. He concludes that something is happening, and it is definitely not in humanity's favor. Cain comments that perhaps the strangest thing has already arrived, referring to Katal, and the Lord agrees with him. When Cain asks for his opinion, the Lord replies that he doesn't know. Lord Barkin concludes his final assessment of Katal, explaining to Swordmaster Cain that at least he is not hostile towards them, but beyond that, he cannot say anything for certain. The next day, as Katal walks around the city, he notices that people seem scared and panicked upon seeing him. He wonders if people are reacting with fear because of his clothes. Katal completely misunderstands the situation, thinking the problem is his clothes made of animal hide, which are not considered civilized. He enthusiastically decides he will buy civilized clothes. He enters a clothing store, and the shop owner is terrified upon seeing him. When Katal asks to buy clothes, the shop owner apologizes, saying he has nothing in his size, but suggests they could make a custom outfit for him if he gives him some time. Katal is pleased to hear this possibility and agrees to the custom order. The shop owner tells him he will call him when it's finished. The shop owner fearfully imagines Katal's angry reaction if he doesn't like the outfit, wondering if he will survive this encounter. While Katal is on his way to the guild hall, he spots a small glowing blue gem on the ground. He picks it up and examines it, noting its unusual glow. He decides to ask about it at the guild hall. There, he asks Rosa if she knows what this gem is. He explains that he found it on his way here. He notes that it doesn't look like an ordinary bead, and Rosa agrees to take a look. She examines it and notes that it doesn't look like a gem, and that it is polished or handmade. She notes that it has no name but seems very valuable. While examining it, a light flashes and she enters a trance-like state. Katal snaps his fingers to get her attention and asks if she is okay. Rosa wakes up confused, and Katal tells her it seemed like her mind was drawn to the gem, then dismisses it. Rosa feels that the gem radiates a strange energy and is difficult to identify, and suggests having it appraised. Katal politely declines the offer, saying he'd rather find out for himself as that's part of the fun. He changes the subject and asks about today's quests. Rosa hands him the quest list filled with simple jobs. Katal takes the board to look at the quests. Later, after another day of work, Katal rests, feeling satisfied with his day full of accomplishments. He examines the mysterious gem again, wondering about its true nature and function, and remembers how it affected Rosa. He suddenly hears a voice emanating from the mysterious bead, telling him to come to it. The voice echoes in his head, and he wonders if it's asking him to go somewhere. He finds it amusing that the bead is showing him a map in his mind, and wonders if this is some kind of mind control magic. After a moment of thought, he decides to go. As he is on his way, he tells the insistent voice to be quiet, assuring it that he is coming. He follows the mental map to a dark, hidden location and wonders if this is the place. A magical entrance appears before him. Katal enters and announces his arrival, asking who called him. A sinister voice notes that another sacrifice has entered, and this time a stupid barbarian will make a good offering. An immortal sorcerer, a lich, declares that his resurrection ritual will begin. The narrative reveals the lich's story. In a time of ancient chaos, there was an evil sorcerer who manipulated kings and ignited wars. But his evil deeds eventually led to his exposure and defeat at the hands of heroes. Moments before his defeat, he succeeded in transferring his soul into a life vessel, thus becoming a lich. A lich is defined as a being that achieves immortality by embedding its soul in a life vessel. Thus, the evil sorcerer became a lich, plotting his resurrection. To complete his resurrection, he needed a large number of souls as sacrifices, so he settled near a remote territory and scattered enchanted beads to lure victims one by one. The lich thinks that his plan was proceeding successfully, but he is puzzled by the presence of a barbarian here, as he chose a remote land to avoid attracting attention. He finds his presence unusual. The lich concludes that Katal's large size will make him an excellent sacrifice. The lich explains his trap. He enchanted the beads to only attract those who are ignorant of mysticism. Therefore, he assumes Katal is just an ordinary barbarian ignorant of mysticism, and that his lack of being affected by the magic is just an illusion. The lich addresses Katal, asking him to become the cornerstone of his glorious resurrection. The scene returns to Katal arriving at huge, ominous doors. When he enters, he finds the lich sitting on a throne. Katal is overjoyed, realizing he is seeing a real lich, one of the classic villains of fantasy worlds. The lich is surprised and asks Katal how he was not affected by the bead's magic. Upon seeing the remains of other victims, Katal understands this is how the lich was luring people. The lich is confused because he cannot sense any mysticism from Katal, and concludes he is just an ordinary barbarian. He assumes Katal must be carrying a high-quality mental defense artifact. Katal denies having such a thing. The lich doesn't believe him, saying he would have passed by peacefully if he had been affected by the magic. The lich decides he will have to crush Katal by force and summons his skeleton minions. Katal realizes he is in a dungeon where an evil lich is hiding and understands the general situation. With a powerful blow, he shatters the skeleton, commenting that it's weaker than he expected. The lich gets angry and threatens to tear off his limbs, summoning more skeletons. The lich orders them to eliminate him, but Katal pounces on them in the blink of an eye and easily destroys them all. The lich is shocked. Katal confirms to himself that Kasan's advice was correct. A skeleton dies if its head is destroyed. He expresses disappointment as he was expecting the lich to control death knights, not just skeletons. Angrily, the lich prepares a stronger attack, declaring he will no longer hold back. Using his energy, he summons a new servant. A fully armored skeletal knight appears. Katal is surprised to see another skeletal knight here. He finds it interesting, wondering if the settings of the skeletal knight the lich creates are different. The lich orders the knight to attack. Katal prepares to face the skeletal knight created by the lich. He blocks the knight's attack with his arm and launches a counterattack that shatters the knight's armor and shield. Katal comments that this knight is indeed sturdier. The lich orders his knight to release all its mana. The knight is surrounded by a powerful aura of energy and unleashes its full power. Katal receives the attack. He thinks that the skeletal knight created by the lich is a bit unusual. He then completely shatters it with a single punch. Katal stomps on its remains and asks, "Is that all?" The lich asks in complete shock, "What are you?" When Katal takes a step back, the Lich interprets it as fear and tells him to be afraid. He threatens that he will pay the price for invading his sanctuary. Katal replies in confusion, explaining that he only came because the gem summoned him, and asks the Lich if he wasn't the one who scattered those gems in the first place, leaving the Lich shocked and silent. The Lich realizes the bitter truth, that everyone who came here, including the barbarian, was lured by the gems he had scattered. The Lich, whose full name is revealed to be Kartos Pranioris Casus, yells at Katal to be silent, boasting of his past as a great sorcerer who destroyed 5 kingdoms and faced heroes. Katal mentally compares the Lich's long name to the elf queens, wondering if long names are in vogue in this world. The Lich ignores this and orders him to become the cornerstone of his resurrection. The Lich casts a powerful spell. Katal recognizes it as a spell to manipulate human emotions. It is explained that this spell is a unique magic developed by Kartos, which works by extracting negative emotions and trapping the target within them, leading to the shattering of their mind. The Lich is confident, believing that a barbarian who can't even use mysticism will be completely helpless against true magic. He is puzzled about what to do with Katal, noting that he seems different and isn't wearing any powerful artifacts. He decides to capture him for study and orders his skeletons to drag him away. As the skeletons approach the seemingly helpless Katal, he easily shatters them. The Lich is shocked. He cannot understand how his mind control spell, which should have worked perfectly, failed. Katal sarcastically asks if the Lich was done just standing and watching, and then tried to use the same skeleton tactic again. He describes his methods as boring, which enrages the Lich. The Lich thinks that it is impossible for humans, even transcendent ones, to resist emotion magic. Katal mocks him, asking if he can't use simpler spells like Fireball, which the Lich takes as an insult. The Lich begins to chant a new, more powerful spell. He unleashes a massive dark magic attack meant to swallow the world and plunge it into chaos. Katal's eyes sparkle with excitement as he watches this spectacular magical display. The Lich orders Katal to be devoured, and the attack completely engulfs Katal. The Lich laughs, declaring his victory, but he suddenly starts to cough. He collapses, having exhausted all his magical energy, but confident that this final spell was enough. Katal emerges from the dust, commenting that the attack was impressive. The Lich is completely shocked. Katal stands before him completely unharmed and asks, "But is that all?" The Lich cannot believe that even this attack didn't work. He thinks that he used his most powerful mind control spell, which should have shattered the mind of a legendary hero. He asks in despair, "Then what are you?" Component placement, to which Katal replies that, although the attack was flashy, he didn't feel much from it. Katal tells the Lich that if this is all he has, it's his turn now. The Lich is shocked, realizing that Katal came here knowing his identity. The Lich laughs insanely, assuming Katal is an agent of the Empire, and praises their intelligence network for tracking him down so quickly. He vows that he will rise again and will rule the world once more. The Lich thinks that Katal must be a product of the human farm he heard about in the Empire, a place for breeding specialized talents. He concludes that he is an assassin specially trained to kill him. Despite this, he screams defiantly that he will kill Katal and overthrow the Empire. Katal is completely bewildered, wondering if the Lich is insane. In a final desperate attempt, the Lich casts a spell and screams, demanding Katal's body. He tries to possess Katal's body by entering his mind. The narrative explains that this action will leave him trapped in this body for the rest of his life, unless he becomes a Lich again. The Lich declares that Katal's body is now his. But inside Katal's mental world, the Lich is shocked and confused. He wonders if this is the barbarian's inner world, as he has never seen anything like it before, and realizes that just being in this place is enough to corrupt and shatter the mind. The Lich screams that this is not the work of the Empire. His mind begins to collapse. Outside, Katal stands in complete confusion. He thinks that the Lich was muttering some words and then suddenly collapsed. He is disappointed. While the Lich's dark aura was impressive, that was all there was to it, and he was looking forward to seeing his magic. He concludes that Liches in this world are not that strong. Katal decides to take the rewards, noticing the Lich's staff, which was glowing. He picks up the staff, wondering if it helps in casting spells, and if he would be able to use magic if he kept it. He decides to keep this discovery a secret. He then spots a vase and wonders if it is the Lich's life vessel. He decides to take it to Rosa for appraisal, but he feels that something is still missing. He notices something strange in front of him that looks like a gate, wondering if there is a hidden room. He presses a mechanism on the throne, and a voice responds, "Correct answer." A secret passage opens, revealing the hidden sacrifice room of the Lich Kartos. He wonders who the people inside are and where they came from. The people inside the room react with surprise and fear upon seeing him. Katal wonders what he should do with them, and for now, decides to return to the territory. He believes that once he explains the situation, they will probably send someone to take care of it. Upon returning to the mercenary guild, Rosa greets him, noting that he is back early today. Katal confirms that something came up. He tells her it's about the gem he showed her the day before. Rosa thinks he is joking about finding a lich, but Katal asserts that he was not joking. Rosa is still skeptical, wondering why one of only 5 liches in the world would appear in such a secluded place. To prove his point, Katal presents her with a ceramic pot, saying he believes it's the lich's life vessel, and asks her to appraise it. Rosa is shocked, realizing he wasn't joking. Katal adds that there were a few people inside the lich's hideout. He mentions that he thought about bringing them, but their souls had already departed, so he left them for now, expressing hope that the guild will send someone to handle the situation. Rosa starts connecting the dots, remembering the recent recurring disappearances in the territory, and realizes these people were likely the lich's victims. She panics and says she will call someone immediately. A short while later, the guard captain arrives, shouting and asking about the lich, and Katal greets him calmly. Katal reassures the captain that everything has been taken care of, and that it was no big deal. When the captain asks for the lich's identity and mentions the name Kartos Pranioras Cases, Katal confirms the name sounds familiar. The captain immediately recognized the name, explaining that Kartos was a sorcerer who turned the world upside down 100 years ago, causing immense chaos with his emotion-manipulating magic. He adds that he drove kings mad and brought down 5 kingdoms. Katal explains that the lich wasn't that impressive, and that he destroyed himself while doing something strange. The captain finds it hard to believe that a legendary sorcerer like Kartos destroyed himself, and asks Katal for a clearer explanation. Katal says he doesn't have much to add. The captain decides he must report to the Lord immediately. Later, the Lord and the captain discuss the situation. The Lord expresses his confusion about a lich being near the territory. He wonders if it could have been another type of monster. But the captain rules that out based on the testimonies of the rescued victims and the presence of the life vessel as evidence. The Lord considers the seriousness of having the lich's life vessel near the territory. It is dangerous enough that the Empire will send investigators, and this is particularly worrying with Swordmaster Cain absent from the territory. He considers the whole situation a major headache. He orders a messenger to be prepared to send to the kingdom, but feels they are somewhat fortunate. The guard captain agrees, noting that if it weren't for the barbarian discovering the lich, their territory would have been the first victim. The Lord deduces that Kartos, the lich, was likely preparing for his resurrection. He concludes that the situation was not normal at all. The Lord says that such a great deed deserves a valuable reward, but he doubts whether his territory can offer a suitable reward. The next day, a panicked servant wakes the Lord from his sleep. The servant informs him of the arrival of Lady Aquas, the heretic inquisitor of the sun god, which shocks the Lord. He wonders in confusion why she has come here. The heretic inquisitor appears in all her majesty. The Lord nervously welcomes her and introduces himself. She thanks him for his hospitality. She introduces herself as Aquas, the heretic inquisitor of the sun god, and it's mentioned she is the youngest to ever hold this title. It is recounted that she executed 7 sorcerers and single-handedly stopped a large-scale ritual. She is currently the most powerful heretic inquisitor on the continent, wielding authority that surpasses that of lords. Even the Empire bows to the orders of the sun god in her presence. The Lord wonders again about the reason for her presence. Aquas notes that the territory has been noisy recently. The Lord explains that a minor problem occurred in a dungeon and was resolved, concluding that her visit is not because of the lich. When he asks her the reason for her visit, she says she came to talk about the prophecy, but she adds that before she tells him the details of the prophecy, she would first like to confirm what happened in the territory. The Lord asks her worriedly if she means the barbarian and the lich. She confirms it, and adds that the lich was probably Kartos Pranioras Cases. The Lord is shocked that she knows, and Aquas tells him that the confirmation is here. He presents her with the life vessel of the lich Kartos. Aquas is visibly shocked upon seeing the life vessel. She asks if that barbarian is still in the territory. The Lord confirms he is still residing there. Aquas wonders if it's possible that the barbarian defeated Kartos. The Lord replies that it is possible. He then drops the final shocking piece of information, that Lord Cain himself was defeated by him, leaving Aquas in a state of complete shock. Aquas deduces that a new powerful figure has appeared and asks about this barbarian's tribe. Lord Barkin tells her that he claims to be from the White Snowfield, and Aquas is shocked, wondering how something from a demon realm could appear in the outside world. She thinks that this barbarian might be the reason she came here. She requests to meet the barbarian personally. Meanwhile, Katal contemplates the Lich's staff, which he believes is a tool to support magic, and decides he will ask mages about it later. Then he realizes it's time for something. The guard captain arrives and informs him that the heretic inquisitor of the sun god has requested to meet him at the church. The captain asks him to show proper respect, and Katal reassures him. Katal meets the captain in front of the church, who seems nervous. Then Katal announces that they will set off. Katal reflects on the existence of gods in this world, and how they sometimes bestow their power directly or descend themselves. He thinks that the church is a gathering place for those who serve the gods. Katal is impressed by the beauty of the sun god's church. The captain tells him that someone will guide him inside and thanks him. Katal enters the majestic church, and is greeted by 3 priestesses dressed in white. One of them tells him that Lady Aquas has been waiting for him and will escort him to the room. Katal meets Aquas, the heretic inquisitor of the sun god. He introduces himself as Katal the Barbarian and expresses his pleasure at meeting her. Aquas notices his smile and wonders about its meaning, while Katal thinks that she must be very skilled. Katal asks for the reason he was summoned. Aquas explains that it concerns what happened in the dungeon recently, specifically Kartos, the Lich whom Katal claims to have defeated. She adds that Kartos committed great evils throughout the world, and that after becoming a Lich, no one could stop him except a hero. Katal confirms he has heard that, but insists that the Kartos he saw was just a self-destructing Lich. He clarifies that he can only tell her what he saw. Aquas suggests that she allow the sun god she serves to observe their conversation. She explains that if he lies in the presence of the god, a negative reaction will occur, and Katal understands this to be a divine lie detector. Aquas assumes that Katal, as a barbarian, will refuse this proposal. But Katal wonders why he would refuse, considering it a rare opportunity to experience a god's power directly, and he eagerly agrees to start immediately. Aquas is astonished, wondering why he seems so excited. Aquas asks if this proposal bothers Katal. Katal inquires about her meaning, and she clarifies that she means the fact that the god will be watching him. Katal wonders why this would be bothersome, declaring that he has nothing to hide because he hasn't told a single lie. Aquas agrees to proceed and begins to pray. She calls upon her god, who watches from above and observes the sun in all its glory, to reveal any lingering falsehoods. A brilliant light floods the area, and Katal feels an immense presence that transcends human description. He realizes that this presence is curious about him. Aquas is relieved that there is no negative reaction, and begins the ritual. She declares that from now on, within this pillar of light, lying is forbidden. Katal confirms his understanding. Under the direct observation of the sun god, the dialogue between Katal and Inquisitor Aquas began. Katal explained the details of the dungeon clearing operation where he faced the Lich, and as he spoke, the radiant divine power emitted no negative reaction, confirming that everything he said was the absolute truth. Inwardly, Aquas concluded that the Lich Kartos must have been in a severely weakened state while preparing for his resurrection ritual, and that Katal was lucky the sorcerer was not at his full magical strength. Otherwise, this barbarian would not be standing before her now. After the process ended, Katal asked her if her doubts had been dispelled, and she confirmed it and apologized for her impertinence. But he replied that it was fine, as he too had enjoyed this unique experience. After that, Aquas asked for permission to ask one last personal question, and after he agreed, she nervously and directly asked him in a serious tone if he was truly from the White Snowfield. When Katal calmly confirmed his identity, Aquas appeared shocked and disbelieving, wondering how someone could truly come from that demon realm, and she connected his existence to the legend of the Ashen Barbarian told by the Emperor long ago. With a sudden sharp gaze, her red eyes gleaming, she was surprised when Katal expressed a desire to ask her a question in turn. Katal asked Aquas why she had come to this specific territory, and she replied that she had personal business. But Katal countered with a piercing look, asking if her mission was primarily to ascertain whether he was an unclean being. Surprise struck Aquas, who tried to deny it. But Katal clarified that he meant the Eye of God, cleverly pointing out that the god's personal presence to observe their conversation was a momentous event that far exceeded simple lie detection. Under the influence of the god's power that prevents falsehood, Aquas had no choice but to admit the truth of his words. Katal deduced from this that he had been her target from the beginning, which Aquas denied, explaining that it was only upon arriving in the territory that she thought he might be the person mentioned in a prophecy. But the result of the divine observation proved otherwise. Aquas apologized for hiding her true intentions, which Katal accepted, finding the matter interesting in its own way. He then took the opportunity to ask her about the content of that prophecy. Aquas hesitated, clutching the sun symbol hanging around her neck, explaining that this was a secret she usually only revealed to those she trusted, but she decided to speak. Aquas began to narrate the details of the prophecy to Katal, whose face showed signs of astonishment. After some time, Aquas was lost in deep thought, standing by the large church window, until the sound of someone's footsteps interrupted the moment, and she turned to see who it was. It was Lord Barkin. He noticed the worry on Aquas's face. She told him that she had met someone, but this meeting had only made her thoughts more tangled. The Lord asked her who that person was. Aquas confirmed with certainty that Katal was indeed a barbarian from the White Snowfield. The Lord asks in astonishment if this is true, and she replies in the affirmative, adding that if this news were to spread, it would cause turmoil throughout the entire world. The Lord laments that what he had hoped was just a rumor had turned out to be an undeniable truth. The Lord expresses his concern, pointing out that many, chief among them the Emperor, wish to explore the White Snowfield, and that the world would descend into chaos if the Emperor decided to act on this news. Aquas reassures him that there is no need to worry about that, explaining that her organization will handle the Lich Kartos themselves and that they intend to keep the barbarian's existence a secret from the public, which greatly relieves the Lord. He then asks her if all barbarians from the White Snowfield are as strong as Katal, to which she replies in the negative, reasoning that if they were all like him, they would have already left the snowfield and conquered the world. The Lord agrees with her, adding that the barbarians scattered across the world, despite their immense physical strength, are characterized by stupidity, which is a natural shortcoming in them. But he wonders with concern about the grave consequences if these physically dominant beings also acquired intelligence. Aquas tells him she heard that Katal possesses both strength and intelligence, and adds that she also heard the current king of the barbarians is different from his predecessors. Aquas replies that she met him once, and he was indeed different from ordinary barbarians. The Lord comments that a meeting between these two could be interesting, but Aquas strongly rejects the idea. The Lord is surprised by this, and Aquas continues, explaining that the relationship between barbarians and the followers of the gods is not good at all, and that their growing power is not something to be taken lightly. The Lord changes the subject, asking about the content of the prophecy that necessitated a private meeting between her and Katal. She explains that she needed to confirm something, and when the Lord asks what that was, she replies that she wanted to know if Katal was purely human, or if he was just another being pretending to be human. The Lord is shocked and asks her what exactly the prophecy said. Aquas stands before the large window, preparing to reveal its contents. And when she does, the Lord appears completely stunned, muttering words of disbelief. Later, the Lord summons Katal again. Katal tells him that, thanks to him, his affairs are going well in the territory, and then asks why he was summoned. The Lord explains that he has something to tell him as the ruler of the territory. Although Katal shows disinterest, the Lord continues, announcing that he has prepared a reward for Katal in appreciation for saving the territory. The Lord orders the reward to be brought in, and surprise shows on Katal's face. When one of the guards places the reward before him, it was a small leather pouch. Lord Barkin explains that this is no ordinary pouch and asks him to inspect it himself. Katal holds the pouch, guessing at its special nature, and the Lord encourages him to check what's inside, revealing to him that it is an artifact of the bag type. He tells him that he can store many items inside it, as much as its size allows, and that the internal space is roughly equivalent to the size of the reception hall they are sitting in. Katal is amazed, realizing that this is the first time he has seen a real artifact, a tool made by magic. The Lord adds that he can put whatever items he wants inside, even if they are larger than the pouch's opening itself. Katal enthusiastically decides to test this immediately using his large axe. As he holds his axe over the small opening, doubting it could possibly fit, the axe is completely pulled into the pouch in a flash, much to his astonishment. The Lord explains that to retrieve any item, he just has to reach his hand inside and imagine that item. Katal follows the instructions and successfully pulls out his axe again, expressing how amazing it is. The Lord tells him this is his gift for saving the territory and hopes he likes it, to which Katal enthusiastically replies that he loves it and will definitely make good use of it. The Lord is pleased with Katal's reaction and considers the matter concluded, but he thinks to himself that the matter of the prophecy still remains, wondering what is happening in his remote territory. He recalls the Swordmaster's words when he told him that things from the demon realms were starting to appear and spread in the world, and that something significant was happening. The Lord connects this to the prophecy. He remembers when Aquas told him its content, that a great evil would descend upon this very territory, and from it would spread throughout the world. It turns out that in the Barkan territory, which is connected by a network of villages, communication with one of these villages was suddenly lost. At first the matter was not given much attention, but when people from a neighboring village were sent to investigate, they never returned. After that, the Lord sent his official guards, but they too disappeared. Only then did the Lord realize that something dangerous was happening. Later at the mercenary guild, Katal asks Rosa about today's quests, and she informs him of an urgent request from the Lord. Katal inquires about the nature of the request, and she explains that the mission is to investigate the village that lost contact, and that all he has to do is go there and confirm the situation, noting that the pay is very high for a seemingly simple task. Katal likes the mission and decides to accept it immediately. Rosa smiles and replies that this is to be expected. At the gathering place for the mission's mercenaries, the priestess Hayez is surprised by Katal's arrival and calls his name in astonishment. Katal appears wearing his new custom-made clothes, and Hayez immediately notices his different attire. He explains to her that his old clothes from the snowfields had worn out and that he had requested this new design himself. Hayez comments that the design is unique and impressive. She asks him if he has accepted this mission as well, and he confirms it, adding that he couldn't refuse such an interesting job. Hayez thinks to herself how unusual he truly is. He then inquires why she is alone, and if her other two companions, Alexandro and Kasan, are not participating in the mission. Hayez guesses that they probably refused the mission after seeing the details. Katal glances at the small crowd around him, noticing that the number of participants is smaller than he expected. He had thought that a simple mission with high pay would attract many people, but their total number didn't even reach 10. Hayez explains to him that the mission is actually a bit dangerous. Although Katal sees that the request itself seems simple, Hayez explains that the pay is much higher than it should be. She reveals to him that there are rumors that the guards sent to the village never returned, which means the mission is not as simple as it seems. Nevertheless, Katal insists that the attendance is still too low. Hayez hesitantly tells him that there is another rumor that explains this. She reveals to him that it's related to Lady Aquas. Katal is surprised to hear the name, and Hayez reveals that the heretic inquisitor of the sun god, Lady Aquas, will be participating in this mission, adding that very few mercenaries dare to work alongside her. Hayez expresses her personal concern, wondering if Aquas plans to cleave her head off. Katal reassures her that it won't happen, describing Aquas as a polite and kind woman. Hayez is shocked to learn that Katal knows Lady Aquas, and he confirms that he knows her, even describing her as his friend. Hayez stands speechless, unable to comprehend the idea of a heretic inquisitor and a barbarian being friends. At that moment, Katal approaches Aquas, who has arrived at the location, and greets her, saying it's good to see her again. Aquas coldly replies that she never recalls them becoming friends. Katal laughs and brushes it off, cheerfully suggesting they become friends from now on. Aquas ignores his suggestion and changes the subject, turning to Hayez, who is standing next to Katal, and asking if his companion is also a follower of another god. Katal is surprised that Aquas knows Hayez. Aquas inquires why Hayez is here, explaining that, as far as she knows, the followers of Lady Calusia are currently in a period of rest. Aquas thinks that only high-ranking members are supposed to be active at this time, but she quickly retracts her suspicion, telling Hayez that she must be mistaken, as she doesn't know every detail of every religious organization. At that moment, the guard captain arrives with his soldiers at the gathering place. Katal immediately recognizes him and greets him cheerfully, noting that they meet again. Aquas stands calmly beside Katal, while Hayez looks at them with worry and tension. The guard captain formally welcomes all the participants who accepted the request, and after confirming everyone's presence, he announces that it is time to set off. Katal comments with a hint of sarcasm that their majestic gathering makes him feel as if they are a military squad on their way to launch a real raid on a fortified castle. In all seriousness, he asks Aquas if her swift action now means that this is the fateful time spoken of in the ancient prophecy. She replies with cautious calm that she cannot say for sure, as the god has not revealed the exact timing of such a momentous event. All that has happened is that they have lost contact with the village completely and suddenly. Katal deduces from her words that despite the uncertainty, there is still a possibility that this is the intended dangerous event. The words of the mysterious prophecy that an unparalleled great evil would descend upon the earth dance in his mind, and he smiles with clear enthusiasm as the idea of confronting the great evil seems to spark his interest and curiosity immensely. After a period of cautious walking, the team finally reaches the entrance of the lost village, which is enveloped in a suspicious silence. The guard captain asks Aquas about her spiritual feeling towards the place, and she replies with concern that she cannot sense any living presence at all, as if the village is devoid of souls. The captain guesses that the inhabitants might have simply fled in fear of something, and he issues orders for his men to disperse and search thoroughly for any clues that might reveal the secret of this disappearance. The mercenaries, Katal and Hayez, agree without hesitation and begin to spread out among the silent alleys of the village. The captain thinks that the village is very small, accommodating no more than 100 people, and that it's logically impossible for everyone to disappear suddenly without leaving any trace behind. He is fully confident that they will find some clue, no matter how small, and orders the comprehensive search to begin immediately. While searching a wooden building, one of the mercenaries is greatly surprised by what he finds inside. He calls out to the captain loudly, indicating that he has found ready-to-eat food. The captain initially thinks the inhabitants left it behind in a hurry while fleeing, but the mercenary clarifies that the food is still warm, as if it had been prepared just moments ago. The captain is shocked by this strange information, wondering in confusion how such an illogical thing could happen, as contact with the village had been lost for at least several days. Amidst his confusion, another report comes in stating that no footprints or signs of the inhabitants leaving the village or even hiding anywhere nearby have been found. The captain orders the search to continue in the hope of finding any thread that will lead them to the truth. The results of the ongoing search reveal a perplexing and disturbing scene throughout the village. There are clear signs of daily life continuing normally, but there is no human presence whatsoever. The mercenaries confirm that all evidence suggests people were just here living their lives, but there is no physical or spiritual trace of them. The captain asks Aquas if she has any explanation for this mystery, but she admits her inability and that she also does not know what is going on. He then turns to Katal, who in turn confirms that he has found no significant clues and that he feels no strange presence in the air. The captain expresses his extreme frustration and anger at this mysterious situation that defies all imagination. Katal calmly and confidently suggests that they ask someone who might know the answer they are looking for. The captain is puzzled by his words, so Katal explains that there is another person present with them in this deserted village. Everyone is surprised and looks around nervously, and the captain spots a strange-looking woman who was not among them before, wondering in horror how long she has been standing there among them in silence. The mysterious woman smiles, expressing her surprise that Katal managed to notice her presence, even though she had hidden herself very skillfully. Katal simply replies that it's natural for them to notice a stranger suddenly appearing in a place like this, but the woman tells him that people usually don't realize she's there until she wants them to. The mysterious woman scoffs at the tense group, sarcastically noting that even the powerful inquisitor of the sun god was unable to detect her hidden presence. She looks at Katal and thinks that he doesn't seem to have awakened any of the deep mystical secrets. Katal boldly asks her about her true identity, but she completely ignores his question and considers him merely an unexpected gain in her plans. The guard captain feels the imminent danger emanating from her and shouts at everyone to retreat immediately and get away from her. The captain realizes with shock and horror that Aquas, despite being the most powerful inquisitor among them, also cannot sense this woman's presence at all, as if she were a ghost. In a moment of terror, the captain reaches two possible conclusions, with no third option. Either this woman is not an evil or demonic being at all, or she represents an evil of a very high and powerful level that her presence cannot be detected by conventional means. With a sinister smile that chills the blood in their veins, she announces that she has made her decision about their fate. Describing Katal as an interesting barbarian, she vows in a decisive tone that she will take him with her to hell to be her slave forever. The woman transforms to reveal her terrifying true demonic form and unleashes a massive ball of destructive purple energy. She flies before them in the air, defying gravity. While Katal, Hayez, and Aquas watch the scene in complete shock and helplessness before this overwhelming power they have never witnessed before. The guard captain screams for everyone to run for their lives, but the mercenaries discover they are trapped inside a transparent magical barrier that suddenly appeared, and they desperately try to break it with force. The demoness announces in a voice that echoes throughout the village that the entire place is now under her absolute control and no one can escape her grasp, adding as she licks her lips greedily that they have all become her prey. Everyone realizes they are facing a real and powerful demon, and a terrified Hayez confirms that this entity is a named demon, one of the most dangerous types of demons. She begins to pray fervently to her god for salvation and deliverance from this nightmare. Katal places his hand on her head to reassure her, telling her in a calm voice to calm down, that he is by her side and will not leave her. Katal asks her what it means for a demon to have a name and what distinguishes it from others. Hayez explains with a trembling voice that most entities called demons are just weak fragments of evil and magic and are not truly powerful. But she clarifies that there are true and original demons, beings born in the depths of darkness who choose their own names, and that the weakest named demon possesses enough power to destabilize an entire kingdom and plunge it into chaos. Katal understands that this demon before them is one of those formidable powers not to be underestimated. And Hayez confirms this, recognizing her by her distinctive horns as Ashtir, a legendary demoness who appeared hundreds of years ago and caused immense destruction. Katal asks if they can break the magical barrier by force, but Hayez answers in the negative and with despair, explaining that the place has already become the demon's domain, and the only way out is to defeat it, which is nearly impossible. Katal finds this strangely interesting and is surprised when the barrier begins to crack and crumble as soon as he touches it with his hand. He then suddenly laughs, cleverly hiding the hole he made, and declares that he might enjoy watching the situation for a little longer. Hayez looks at him, completely bewildered by his calm reaction, and he gives her a reassuring gesture with his hand, telling her not to worry. The demoness Ashtir mocks Aquas, asking sarcastically if the trick she prepared for them wasn't fun and exciting to investigate. She reveals that the signs of life they found in the disappeared village, where it seemed as if people were just there, were nothing but an illusion and an elaborate demonic trick, aimed at manipulating humans and luring them into her trap. Aquas looks at her with intense disgust, describing her game as vile and despicable. Aquas thinks that summoning a named demon into the physical world requires a massive sacrifice of souls, and that the inhabitants of an entire village are barely enough as an offering for such a powerful entity. Also, turning an entire territory into a demonic domain without anyone noticing is beyond impossible. Aquas wonders in confusion how this demoness managed to descend into this world and infiltrate it without being detected by the forces of good, to which Ashtir sarcastically replies that she will not, of course, tell her secret. Aquas screams at her in anger, describing her as a vile evil that has come to defile this holy land. Ashtir laughs loudly and insults Aquas by calling her the obedient dog of the gods, and asks sarcastically if her powerful god can save her from this predicament. She then tells her seriously to listen carefully to what she is about to say, explaining that deep cracks have begun to form in the fabric of this world, and that it no longer belongs to humans and gods alone as they believe. It is narrated that a very long time ago, gods and humans engaged in a fierce war with the forces of evil, and the conflict ended in their crushing victory, with the defeated evil being banished from the world to deep dimensions. Ashtir proudly declares that she is the demoness of gravity, and that she has been eagerly awaiting this day in hell, vowing to wash away the shame of past defeat and cover the entire world with evil and darkness. Aquas angrily replies that this world will remain the property of gods and humans only, and orders the disgusting creature to return immediately from whence it came. Aquas begins a sacred ritual, calling upon her god to descend upon her with his power. A massive pillar of brilliant golden light engulfs her, and she begins to transform into a divine warrior form. While Katal thinks to himself, just as he expected, that enemies in these stories never attack during transformation scenes. Aquas finally appears clad in full golden divine armor that radiates power and light. Ashtir finds this transformation interesting and amusing, and summons a huge, elegant crystal scythe, declaring her readiness to fight. Aquas calls the demoness arrogant and overconfident, and charges towards her at super speed to attack. The two clash in a violent and powerful collision, causing a massive explosion of energy that shakes the ground beneath them. And as a result, Ashtir and Aquas are thrown back with force. Ashtir stands confidently, saying that the battle should be fought with dignity and respect, and asks sarcastically if the divine hunting dogs do not know the rules of combat. Aquas glares at her with intense anger and asks if she is done with her nonsense and ready to die.
The fierce battle continues between the holy warrior Aquas and the demoness Ashtir as Aquas rushes forward at great speed, leaving a trail of scattered dust behind her, her eyes flashing with holy fire. But in an unexpected moment, Ashtir suddenly disappears in the blink of an eye, as if she was never there to begin with. Before Aquas can comprehend what happened, the demoness appears directly behind her, delivering a treacherous blow from the rear, accompanied by the sound of the air tearing. Aquas blocks the blow at the last second with an amazing reaction, but Ashtir succeeds in grabbing her divine shield with her sharp claw, which surprises and shocks the warrior, as no being had ever touched her shield in this way before. The demoness seizes this precious opportunity and delivers a crushing blow with all her might, sending Aquas hurtling towards the ground with tremendous force, creating a large crater where she lands. Ashtir continues her attack relentlessly and without mercy, realizing she has found a weak point in her opponent's defense, unleashing a continuous volley of dark blows that Aquas struggles to block with great difficulty, while retreating step by step. In the midst of this violent battle, Aquas begins to recite a verse from her holy scriptures in a booming voice that echoes across the battlefield, declaring with a voice full of faith that the brilliant light will not be violated by any creature of darkness. As soon as her words end, a massive beam of pure holy light descends from the sky, striking Ashtir directly and forcing her to retreat as she screams in pain. The demoness stands at a distance and looks at her opponent, astonished by Aquas's ability to read the holy scriptures with such power at such a young age. She then praises her with clear sarcasm, saying she is more interesting than she expected. Aquas does not stop there but continues to recite another more powerful verse, calling on her lord to burn all that is evil with his holy fires. She raises her scepter, which begins to glow with a brilliant light, then launches forward at a speed faster than sound, and unleashes another blast of destructive divine energy that takes the form of a holy fire explosion. The battle between the two ignites, and its pace escalates wildly, as they exchange blows at a super speed that the naked eye cannot follow, leading to violent and successive explosions of holy and demonic energy, which destroy the quiet village around them, turning it into burning rubble. The mercenaries and Hayas find themselves in the midst of this devastating conflict, screaming in terror for help, trying to escape the falling debris. Meanwhile, as the two continue their raging battle that shakes the earth, Katal stands aside with his hands in his pockets, watching the magnificent battle with great admiration and a smile on his face, commenting on how exciting it is as if it were an entertainment show. Hayes runs to him in desperation and clings to his arm tightly, begging him with tears in her eyes to help Lady Aquas, who is fighting for them. Katal replies calmly and coldly that he might be able to help, but he wonders why he should interfere, leaving Hayes speechless and shocked by his response. He explains that he doesn't want to spoil such a good and enjoyable fight, as it's rare to see a battle of this level. And although he also wants to fight a demon, for now, he prefers to enjoy watching this exciting fight until the end. Hayes is horrified by his selfish attitude and thinks that this man is not normal and that there is something wrong with his way of thinking. The fierce battle continues between the two opposing forces, as sparks of energy fly everywhere. Ashtir admits to herself that Aquas is a stubborn and strong opponent as expected from the dogs of the gods, but she feels she surpasses her in terms of raw power and combat experience. However, she realizes that the confrontation itself is not in her favor in the long run, as in this world, demonic beings cannot directly challenge the gods for a long time, and she finds herself slowly retreating before the pure divine power of Aquas, which grows stronger with every moment. Ashtir realizes that if the battle continues like this, it will drag on for a long time and might eventually turn against her. She decides that she will resort to a more cunning method that will guarantee her a swift victory. She begins to move at super speed with a wicked and sly smile on her face, then suddenly changes direction and heads towards the defenseless mercenaries who are watching the fight in fear, which shocks Aquas as she realizes the demoness's new target, so she moves quickly and protects them with her body and her shield. Ashtir continues to unleash an attack of dark energy to pressure Aquas's shield and weaken it, while extreme terror appears on the faces of the frightened mercenaries for what might happen to them if the shield breaks. Aquas becomes furious at this treacherous and cowardly attack and calls Ashtir a filthy thing that has no honor. Ashtir laughs with sarcasm and contempt, asking if Aquas really expected a demon like her to fight with the fairness and honor of knights. At the peak of her anger, Aquas begins to recite a verse from her most sacred scriptures, a verse she only uses in extreme situations, announcing the birth of the glittering golden essence that represents the highest degree of holy power. A powerful and radiant golden aura explodes around her, and with it, she creates a holy sanctuary of light in the shape of a dome, then orders everyone to enter it quickly. The surviving mercenaries rush inside the protective barrier, thanking Aquas for saving their lives from certain death. Ashtir laughs wickedly, questioning if it's right to consume such precious and rare holy scriptures to protect some weak humans. Aquas angrily orders her to be silent, and the demoness smiles, commenting that this is the response befitting an angry holy warrior. The two rush towards each other in preparation for the continuation of the decisive confrontation, and Aquas manages to block the fierce attack launched by Ashtir, but she is surprised when she sees her skillfully dodge and jump into the air above her in an acrobatic move. Suddenly, she closes the distance between them and approaches, whispering in her ear that death is just death, and no one will acknowledge Aquas's noble sacrifice for these scums. She warns her that if she continues like this, she will fall and disgrace the name of her god whom she serves. Then, with extreme cunning, she offers her a simple and tempting choice: to remove the holy power protecting the mercenaries so she can use her full strength to protect herself. And if she manages to defeat her after that, her honor and the power of her god will be exalted in the heavens. Ashtir asks with biting sarcasm if Aquas will really die for a handful of mortal humans. Aquas realizes these are just cheap psychological tricks and describes her words as pointless and that they will not affect her. When Ashtir sees that her provocation has failed, she smiles viciously and tells her to die a martyr then, since she has chosen it. She then unleashes a concentrated and devastating attack of dark energy, raising her power to its absolute maximum. While Aquas struggles with all her might to block this overwhelming attack with her holy light, which has begun to gradually fade, suddenly, in the blink of an eye, Ashtir appears before her with astonishing speed as if she were a ghost, and unleashes a violent explosion of dark energy from close range, which throws Aquas backward after she barely managed to dodge it at the last moment. Although she manages to quickly regain her balance, shock and fear are clearly visible on her face. Ashtir continues her attack at great speed without giving her any chance to catch her breath, launching rings of purple energy that surround Aquas from all sides and completely trap her like snakes. Aquas finds herself surrounded by pitch-black darkness, unable to see anything, while the demoness attacks her from above like a hawk swooping down on its prey. Ashtir declares that she is tired of hearing the holy scriptures of the gods and launches a devastating attack with all her might. Under the weight of the violent attack, Aquas coughs up blood and is thrown to the ground with extreme force. At the last moment, she grabs her shield and blocks a fatal stab that was about to pierce her heart. Nevertheless, Ashtir continues to attack her brutally while she is helpless and on the ground. The demoness gathers a massive amount of dark energy in her hand in the form of a black sphere, and crushes Aquas with it after launching it directly at her, creating a violent explosion that shatters the golden barrier that was protecting the mercenaries. One of the mercenaries screams in despair, realizing they will all die now that their protection is gone. Ashtir smiles viciously, announcing that she will eat them for dessert after her main course. But she decides to start with Aquas first, and wonders about the taste of the noble dog of the gods as she opens her mouth full of sharp and terrifying fangs. At the moment Ashtir was about to pounce, Katal's hand suddenly appears and stops her jaw with force before it can close on Aquas, and he calmly and coldly orders her to stop, declaring that this is enough playing around. Both Aquas and Ashtir are completely stunned by his sudden and unexpected appearance. The demoness wonders to herself when he got here and how, as she did not feel his presence at all, as if he had appeared out of nowhere. Without uttering another word, Katal delivers a powerful and direct punch to Ashtir's face, sending her flying across the village in a violent shockwave that destroyed several buildings in its path. He then calmly turns to Aquas, who is still in a state of shock on the ground, and asks her if she is okay. Aquas looks at him in amazement, and remembers at that moment that this is the mysterious man who defeated Swordmaster Cain with complete ease. From a distance, Ashtir rises from the rubble, her eyes burning with anger and fire, and screams at Katal, calling him an arrogant barbarian, and asks how he dares to interrupt her delicious meal. Katal simply replies as he dusts off his clothes, declaring that Aquas is his friend, and for that simple reason, he will not let her die. Ashtir gets even angrier at his cold response, and tells him that she was planning to keep him alive to be her new toy after she finishes eating the rest. But he replies with amusement and a provocative smile that he has no intention of being anyone's toy. The demoness replies with a wicked smile, saying that he will die here and now then, and she summons her weapon, which takes the form of a massive demonic scythe. Aquas tries to get up with difficulty and asks him to retreat and flee immediately. He tells her that despite his ordinary appearance, he is strong enough to handle her, but she warns him with concern that he cannot defeat a demon with just physical strength. She insists that she is strong enough to fight despite her poor condition, trying to get to her feet. Aquas explains that only divine power is capable of banishing demons from this world and purifying them. She adds that this is a cosmic law that has existed since the dawn of time, and since they are now in the demon's domain, there is no hope for a miracle to save them. Katal contemplates her words seriously for a moment, then notices her weak condition and grave injuries and tells her that she does not look fit to fight at all right now. Aquas replies with determination and resolve that she must fight because she serves the god, and it is her duty to face evil head-on until her last breath. Katal expresses his admiration for her determination and strong faith, but he kindly asks her to leave this fight to him and rest, which puzzles and surprises her. He then smiles broadly and explains that he has always wanted to fight a demon himself to see how strong he is. Ashtir tells him that he doesn't really understand and mocks him, saying that he can't even touch her with his pathetic human strength. Katal challenges her to test the truth of her words. The demoness licks her claws with relish, expressing her desire to see his beautiful eyes twist in pain as she tears him to pieces. She then launches her first attack with all her speed and power, creating a massive vortex of dark energy around her. She then launches from the vortex at lightning speed to attack Katal, which shocks Aquas and makes her fear for his fate. But with complete composure and calm, Katal delivers a powerful and direct punch to her face in the middle of her attack, sending her flying into the air after her head was completely crushed by the force of the blow, leaving Aquas in a state of utter shock and disbelief at what her eyes had seen.